Chapter 1105. The Axe Gang is destroyed. Jean Anlin swung his immortal sword, and a beam of golden sword light slammed into the ground, creating a ditch several meters deep in the ground in front of Jean Anlin. At the same time, dark clouds appeared in the sky, blotting out the entire sky. The confrontation between the two celestial kings caused the atmosphere between heaven and earth to become incomparably heavy. Muffled claps of thunder rumbled through the dark clouds. The immortals in the city felt as if the end of the world was upon them. They were terrified and uneasy. The city's experts, who were merely entering immortals and human immortals, trembled in fear. Even the Earth immortal experts were staring at the changing weather above their heads with a solemn expression. The guards of the city lord's manor were scattered throughout the city, and the city lord himself stood atop the city walls. A clash between two immortal kings would deal a fatal blow to the city. They had no way of stopping the two immortal kings, so all they could do was do everything in their power to minimize their losses. When Yi Zichen said he was an immortal king, the bound men, whether it was Wu Di, Wei Jie, or the others, all revealed astonished expressions. He was so young, yet he possessed unparalleled talent for pill refinement. Now he was an immortal king? A few of the human immortals couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Compared to Yi Zichen, they'd lived half their lives in vain. Inwardly, however, they rejoiced that they'd been able to fight alongside someone like Yi Zichen. We have to win. Wu Di and the others gnashed their teeth and muttered to themselves. Little did they know, when the Axe Gang sensed that Yi Zichen's immortal pressure was on par with Jean Anlin's, their hearts leapt to their throat. They clenched their fists and prayed for Jean Anlin. You. Not bad. Jean Anlin sensed Yi Zichen's immortal pressure, as well as the power of his previous attack. Even though Huang Aogu's death had gotten to Jean Anlin's head, he had no choice but to admit that this youth, who looked so much younger than him, had reason to take him seriously. By now, he no longer looked at Yi Zichen with disdain. Instead, he viewed Yi Zichen as a worthy opponent. I've always been good. In response to Jean Anlin's praise, Yi Zichen merely smiled indifferently. But you still have to die. Suddenly, Jean Anlin let out an especially arrogant roar of anger. His body began to radiate with the boundless power of lightning. The power of thunder and lightning directly communicated with the thunder and lightning in the sky. In an instant, the entire void was filled with lightning and thunder. Jean Anlin's hair also turned silver-white. The clothes on his upper body exploded, and his taut muscles brimmed with explosive power. His aura was like that of a primordial beast as he stared intently at Yi Zichen. In the past 1,000 years, no immortal king has ever perished in the 72 districts. You will be the first. I will use your soul as a sacrifice for Ao Gu's death. Boom. Countless bolts of heavenly lightning fell from the sky. Jean Anlin was like a lightning beast, his entire body crackling with white lightning. The heavenly thunder rumbled, and in an instant, it was as if doomsday had arrived. Get ready! At the same time, the city guards who were scattered all over the city also shouted angrily. The city lord leaped into the air, his palms continuously forming hand seals. Waves of immortal spiritual energy rippled outwards. He couldn't let the lightning land in the city. However, at that moment, scatter lightning. The power of the 5 elements lay in their ability to forcibly distort their power. Although Yi Zichen had only achieved minor success in his lightning arts, they were still superior to ordinary lightning-type technique. His words were like a motto. When he opened his mouth, the heavenly lightning seemed to be bound by the laws and was forcibly erased. Erased the heavenly lightning. This scene was absolutely shocking to anyone. The guards scattered throughout the city looked up at the sky in bewilderment. They could no longer hear the rumbling of thunder. Just now, the heavenly lightning had been so powerful, but halfway through its descent, it had vanished. The city lord, who'd almost used his fated blood as bait, was stunned. Even with his peak sky immortal strength, he hadn't sensed how the lightning had vanished. Wu Di and the others, as well as the Axe gang members, were no exception. Jean Anlin was the only exception. The heavenly lightning had descended through his connection with heaven and earth. When it vanished, he could clearly sense that someone had erased it. It was you. After a brief moment's hesitation, Jean Anlin's gaze landed on Yi Zichen. He didn't believe that his actions had provoked the might of the divine mountains to erase his heavenly lightning. He knew very well that, given his level, he wasn't powerful enough to involve the divine mountain's major figures. Then, only Yi Zichen could. Yi Zichen smiled calmly and nodded. It was me. There's no need to embarrass yourself in front of me with your lightning element. I've already given you one chance. I'll give you one last chance. You'd better take advantage of it. With that, Yi Zichen viciously stabbed the immortal sword into the ground. It was merely an immortal-grade sword, but in his hands, it unleashed power comparable to a divine artifact. The instant the blade plunged into the ground, it seemed as if it had been sliced into pieces. The fissures extended hundreds of meters into the distance. Jean Anlin was astonished. By now, he fully understood that he'd provoked someone he couldn't possibly resist. The lightning element was the most tyrannical of the 5 elements. He'd only been so unruly because he was a lightning element cultivator. But Yi Zichen had completely erased his lightning element. In that case, there was nothing he could do that was stronger than heavenly lightning. In truth, as soon as Yi Zichen erased his lightning, he'd already lost. But sitting around and waiting for death wasn't in his nature. Lightning, come. Jean Anlin ignored the shadow of his previous lightning strike and tried to establish a connection with the heavenly lightning in the sky once more. When he saw this, even Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Using the same old trick again? You really haven't brought me any surprises at all. Yi Zichen sighed indifferently, then glanced up at the sky. The roiling heavenly lightning vanished once more. Then, Yi Zichen reached out to the immortal sword he'd stabbed into the ground. You no longer have a chance. He pointed his finger at the sky, and the thunder that had disappeared instantly rumbled again. In the blink of an eye, a purplish-red bolt of lightning descended from the sky like a dragon. It landed right on top of Jean Anlin's head. Heavenly lightning struck, destroying both his body and soul. By the time the heavenly lightning vanished, Jean Anlin had already turned into charcoal. Black smoke rose from his body as he collapsed to the ground. At the same time, Yi Zichen made his way to the Axe Gang's main hall. No one dared stand in his way. The Axe Gang. Yi Zichen's lips curved into a cold smile as he looked at the plaque hanging above the main hall. Then he swung his sword viciously at it. There's no longer any need for it to exist. Chapter 1106. Various movements. Little did they know that the moment Jean Anlin died, the Sky Great District's Green Gang was in an uproar. Half a month ago, Jean Anlin had broken through to the peak sky immortal level. He'd said he'd join the Green Gang as an outer sect attendant in 3 months. A few days ago, the Green Gang received news that Jean Anlin had broken through to Immortal King. Peak Sky Immortals weren't much to the Green Gang. Some people spent their entire lives struggling to cross the line of Immortal King. But breaking through to Immortal King was a qualitative change. In any faction, Immortal Kings were extremely important. The Green Gang was no exception. Jean Anlin's breakthrough meant that the Green Gang had decided to give him the position of an inner sect attendant. That was a fairly high position in the gang. But just now, the person in the spirit room had said, Jean Anlin's soul jade slip had shattered. An Immortal King had never died in the 72 districts in 1,000 years. This news instantly caused a huge uproar in the Green Gang. Quite a few of the sect members couldn't help but ask who had the gall to kill an Immortal King. And an Immortal King of the Green Gang at that. The sect's elders didn't hesitate to report the matter to the gang leader. Within the conference hall, 6 coiling dragon pillars towered above the main hall. More than 10 high-ranking members of the Green Gang stood in the middle of the hall. They had all come because of Jean Anlin's death. In the seat directly in front of them sat a middle-aged man. "All right, I understand everything you've said," said the man in the seat. The man on the seat said in a deep voice. The higher-ups in the hall also spoke up one after another. "Gang leader, how do you think we should handle Jean Anlin's death? What else can we do? He's dead, and no one is allowed to mention it in the future. As for the axe gang we've set up outside, there's no need to pay them any mind." The man's response shocked everyone in the hall. An immortal king had died just like that? Even the outside factions had given up on him. After all, the Green Gang's current development was partly due to the Axe Gang's transportation of resources. "Gang leader, shut up." The senior members wanted to say something, but the man in the seat shouted angrily. The pressure of someone who'd been in a high position for a long time filled the entire hall, silencing everyone. "Jean Anlin is an immortal king, but isn't the one who killed him an immortal king? Any immortal king is worthy of our careful treatment. Could it be that you want us to find trouble with that immortal king? How foolish! All right, this matter ends here. In the future, no one in the gang is allowed to delay the investigation because of this matter. We'll deal with Jean Anlin's death internally. That's all. You're dismissed." "Yes." The upper echelons carefully left the hall. Only when they had all disappeared did the leader of the Green Gang quickly put away his stern expression. He stood up from his chair and bowed towards the curtains. "Sir, are you satisfied with this arrangement?" "Satisfaction is not for me to hear." Not long after, a woman's soft voice sounded from behind the curtain. "Your performance this time is not bad, but I don't want to see you stubbornly go your own way after I leave." "I wouldn't dare." The leader of the Green Gang kept smiling obsequiously. If an outsider were to see this scene, their jaws would definitely drop. The leader of the Green Gang was a famous existence in the 72 district. With his immortal king-level strength and divine artifact, he was almost undefeatable in the 72 districts. Furthermore, the Green Gang was a peak faction in the Sky Great District. The other factions could only hope to stand up to them after some practice. And yet, this sort of existence was carefully smiling obsequiously. "If Yi Zichen goes to the Sky Great District in the future, remember, give him some help." This humble one obeys. There was a flash of light, and the person behind the curtains disappeared from the hall. The leader of the Green Gang maintained his bowing posture for a long time. Only after a full hour did he heave a sigh and sit back down, his gaze focused on the front of the hall. "Jean Anlin, you didn't die in vain." The Axe Gang, a peak faction in the profound Great District, had been destroyed. The news spread like wildfire, and in just a few days, practically everyone in the profound Great District, including the Earth and Sky Great Districts, heard of it. Yi Zichen's reputation soared after this battle. Quite a few factions in the Sky Great District had already sent people out to search for him, hoping to rope him into their ranks. The mortal Great District's Wu family. In the end, news of the Axe Gang capturing their Qilin son spread far and wide. As soon as Wu Wenguang received the news, he rushed back to the Wu family. When he learned of the First Elder's actions, he couldn't help but curse him for being senile. Then, he told everyone about how Yi Zichen had single-handedly destroyed the Axe Gang. When they heard this, everyone in the Wu family panicked. They were worried that they'd become the next Axe Gang. Within the Wu family's main hall, Wu Wenguang sat on the family head's throne, his eyes narrowed. Practically all of the Wu family's higher-ups were present. The first elder, Wu Honghua, sat in his chair like a sinner. He couldn't deny that his decision and actions had plunged the Wu family into absolute danger. Family head Lil Di is Senior Ye's disciple, after all. Out of respect for Lil Di, he probably won't do anything to our Wu family. Although the First Elder's actions have infuriated Senior Yi, he did it for the sake of our family's survival. He made a decision that was beyond reproach. That's right. As long as Lil Di pleads with Senior Yi, our family might still have a chance to turn things around. The Wu family's higher-ups chimed in, but Wu Wenguang didn't listen to a single word. All of their plans were built on the premise that Wu Di would put in a good word for them. But what if Wu Di didn't say anything? The Wu family treated Wu Di extremely harshly. To put it mildly, wasn't harsh, it was ruthless. Although they'd made Wu Di their Qilin son and brought his mother's memorial tablet back to the clan's ancestral hall, their relationship had improved somewhat. The knot in his heart still hadn't been resolved. "It's all your fault." He glared viciously at Li Na. If the Li family hadn't been so ruthless, their current problems wouldn't have been so troublesome. Wu Wenguang glared at Li Na, but Li Na bit her lip and didn't dare speak. Ever since learning that Yi Zichen was an immortal king, the Li family had been terrified. Of course, it was Wu Di, but it had always been the Li family causing trouble. Right now, there's only one way to save our family. After a long moment of silence and thought, Wu Wenguang looked intently at everyone in the hall. Cancel the marriage alliance with the profound Great District's Kai family. Let Yunnan marry Wu Di. This. The people in the hall were all shocked, and there were even people who spoke out. Family head, we've already provoked Senior Yi. If we cancel the marriage, won't we provoke the Kai family as well? Chapter 1107. The Yao Sealing Pagoda opens. The destruction of a peak faction, the Axe Gang, was like a massive bomb going off in the profound Great District. Everyone in the profound Great District heard the news, and after a few exchanges, they knew what was going on. Rumor had it that the Axe Gang had kidnapped the Wu family's Qilin son, Wu Di, and that his master had single-handedly wiped out the gang. Everyone in the profound Great District, or rather, the 72 districts, knew that the Axe Gang was a subsidiary of the Green Gang. The other families were all waiting for the Green Gang to send someone to kill them. However, a full half a month had passed, and the Green Gang had ceased all activity. This invisibly increased Yi Zichen's power. Everyone beneath the Divine Mountains knew of Yi Zichen's name. Practically every family in the 72 districts considered Yi Zichen someone they couldn't afford to provoke. Among them, the profound Great District's Kai family's situation was the most awkward. It wasn't that the Kai family's house was in trouble, but in truth, it wasn't that far off. During the Wu family's grand competition, Kai Tong had tried to take Wu Di's life. Now that Yi Zichen had used his immortal king-level strength to wipe out the Axe Gang, the Kai family couldn't help but feel insecure. They were terrified that Yi Zichen would take his anger out on them. Just now, the Wu family had come to cancel their engagement, and the marriage alliance was over. The Wu family has gone too far. Back when their position in Raging Flame City was in an awkward position, they begged our Kai family to marry them. But now they're canceling the wedding. The bride's side is clearly trying to humiliate our Kai family. The Kai family's elders were furious. Among them, the fierce-looking Kai family head gloomily stared at the gates. Just now, the Wu family had sent someone to cancel the engagement, had walked out of here. Wu Wenguang placed the letter of annulment on the stone table. Even though Wu Wenguang had put himself in an extremely low position in this letter, and the words in the letter also revealed his difficulties, as well as the despicable behavior of going back on his word. But, in the end, annulment was annulment. The surrounding elders were still criticizing the Wu family's actions, but at that moment, the Kai family head's palms blazed with raging flames. The flames were so hot they seemed capable of melting people. The surrounding elders retreated several steps. The Kai clan's patriarch slammed his palm on the stone table in front of him. The letter that recorded the Wu family's annulment of the engagement and the Kai family's humiliation was turned into ashes by him with a single palm strike, and a handprint was left on the stone table. The clan elders were as silent as cicadas in winter. Although the Kai clan patriarch hadn't said anything, they could all sense the rage in his heart. There's no need to say any more about this. If I were in your shoes, I would do the same thing. The status of an immortal king in the 72 districts was extremely respected. Any clan that had the support of an immortal king was like a carp leaping through the dragon gate. Kai Nan could understand why the Wu family made such a decision. However, even if the Wu family really wanted to break off the engagement, they should have discussed it with the Kai family first. Kai Nan knew that he was a flexible person. If the Wu clan wanted to curry favor with the immortal king, he could cancel the engagement. The Wu family was only doing this to curry favor with that celestial king. They wanted to use the Kai clan to get closer to the celestial king. He couldn't tolerate that. Our Kai clan has already offended that immortal king. It doesn't matter if he will lower himself to deal with our Kai clan or not. We have to deal with him. As his voice faded, Kai Nan narrowed his eyes as he looked to the front. Have Renfei and the others of the younger generation stay with Li Lu for a few days. The clan elders froze. Li Lu was Kai Nan's ex-wife. When Kai Renfei was born, Kai Nan and Li Lu had separated on the grounds that they weren't on good terms. Unbelievably, his wife had married into the Sky Great District's Gao family less than half a month later. It hadn't just been the Kai family. The entire profound Great District had been shaken. Kai Nan had gone into seclusion for several years after that. When he emerged, he'd become an Earth immortal and ordered that no one in the Kai family was to mention Li Lu's name. In the past 20-some years, Kai Renfei had never seen his mother. Now that Kai Nan wanted Kai Renfei to stay with Li Lu, the clan elders couldn't help but speak up. Patriarch, this matter. I've made up my mind. I know Li Lu's character. Although our relationship didn't end well, she won't just sit by and do nothing about Renfei. For Renfei's sake, we'll send a few people to stay with her. It won't be a big deal. Do it now. Don't waste time. With that, Kai Nan frowned and returned to his room. He couldn't help but sigh to himself. In the end, I still have to beg you. All of this was because Yi Zichen had destroyed the Axe Gang, but the Green Gang had sat back and done nothing. Countless people were taking action because of Yi Zichen's name, but the one who'd caused all of this was now sitting in the Axe Gang's territory, staring at the Yao Ceiling Pagoda he'd obtained from the Five Elements' Great Emperor's tomb. Wei Jie and the others had already returned to the mortal Great District to rebuild upheaval. Wu Di had also been brought back to recover. The only reason Yi Zichen had stayed here was to wait for the Green Gang to come. If they did, he'd just wipe them all out. However, after waiting for half a month, the Green Gang still hadn't sent anyone. Out of boredom, Yi Zichen recalled the Yao Ceiling Pagoda he'd obtained from the Five Elements' Great Emperor's tomb. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda was only the size of his palm. It was pitch black, and its surface was speckled with rust. From the outside, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. However, when he'd hunted down the Axe Gang members, he'd clearly sensed the pagoda move strangely. A drop of blood. He infused it with spiritual energy. He'd already tried all of these common methods, but the pagoda still showed no signs of accepting him as its master. Strange. Yi Zichen sat cross-legged on the ground, holding the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. There had to be something special about the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Otherwise, it couldn't have been placed alongside the other 10 treasures. Besides, a few days ago, he'd sensed the Yao Ceiling Pagoda move strangely. Logically speaking, he'd already tried everything he could think of, but the pagoda still hadn't formed any sort of connection with him. I took a precious treasure, but I don't know how to use it. The Five Elements' Great Emperor was a bit of a scam, wasn't he? No matter what, he should have at least included an instruction manual. Yi Zichen fiddled with the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Perhaps he needed to infuse the complete power of the Five Elements into the pagoda. Yi Zichen didn't hesitate. He'd already wasted far too much time on the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. If this still didn't work, he was prepared to give it up. The five elemental energy in his palm continued to pour into the pagoda. When the five elemental energy entered the pagoda, it suddenly flashed with light, and then there was a massive boom, and Yi Zichen felt as if the pagoda had swallowed up his entire soul. He heard a low murmur in his ears. Chapter 1108. Chapter 1108. Dao Heart. Yi Zichen's consciousness blurred. Yi Zichen felt as if he'd entered a different space. When he stabilized his consciousness and looked around, he discovered that he was in a towering palace. There were 16 coiling dragon pillars in the palace, and all of them had their eyes on them. Some were ferocious, some peaceful, some contemptuous. 16 of them, each in a different form, coiled around the pillars. There were 5 paintings in the center of the palace, each of which was engraved with the symbols of wind, rain, thunder, lightning, and fire. Yi Zichen looked at them and realized just how little his understanding of the 5 elements was. "Is that you?" A deep voice, both dignified and gratified, rang out in Yi Zichen's ears. This voice instantly jolted him out of his reverie. When he raised his head, he saw a man in a purple dragon robe sitting on the dragon throne in front of him. The 5 elements' great emperor. Yi Zichen instinctively gulped. Yi Zichen had looked at the landscape paintings very closely. He'd seen the patterns on the robes, and the brand on the man's forehead. It was none other than the 5 elements' great emperor who'd fallen prey to the god emperor's ploy. This junior kowtows in salute to the 5 elements' great emperor. Yi Zichen didn't dare hesitate. He hurriedly bowed to the great emperor. Whoosh! Wall flames burned on the walls of the hall. The flames were azure in color, making the hall look especially eerie. Yi Zichen was so nervous he didn't know what to do. All he could do was lick his lips. The 5 elements' great emperor smiled calmly, then looked at Yi Zichen and said, "Don't worry. You don't have my bloodline, so you have no way of obtaining my inheritance. How did this Yao Ceiling pagoda end up in your hands? Bloodline? Inheritance?" Yi Zichen finally understood. No wonder he couldn't touch anything in the mausoleum. It turned out that the only way to obtain those treasures was to possess the 5 elements' great emperor's bloodline. Qi Mei and Wu Yi understood the mausoleum so well. Didn't that mean they were the 5 elements' great emperor's descendants? No wonder Qi Mei was so righteous. It turned out she wanted to avenge her ancestor. Damn it! That girl really did screw him over. When he thought of this, Yi Zichen gnashed his teeth in hatred. However, these thoughts only lasted for an instant. As soon as the 5 elements' great emperor asked, Yi Zichen answered. "It was by chance that I was able to obtain this tower. When I was in the armory, I met a ghost. That ghost asked me to take a treasure, and I took it." "He asked you to take it?" "For you to be able to enter the armory, it seems that you also walk the path of the 5 elements." The 5 elements' great emperor smiled. "That's right. This junior is untalented. It took me 10 lives of reincarnation to gain some understanding of the Tao of the 5 elements," replied Yi Zichen. "It's not easy to comprehend the 5 elements after 10 reincarnations. You don't have to belittle yourself. Moreover, it's much more difficult to comprehend the power of the 5 elements now compared to our era." The 5 elements' great emperor smiled faintly and narrowed his eyes. Just as the 5 elements' great emperor was about to praise him, Yi Zichen cupped his hands respectfully and asked, "Senior, there's something I don't understand. Speak." The 5 elements' great emperor waved his hand. "From the landscape painting, I saw that the God Emperor wanted to take the Tao of the 5 elements, but you erased it. If that's the case, then why can I still comprehend the Tao of the 5 elements?" Yi Zichen had been puzzled ever since he saw the landscape painting. "What I destroyed was my Tao heart." The 5 elements' great emperor laughed calmly. "The great Tao is formless. Even if I were omnipotent, I wouldn't be able to erase it completely. However, every great Tao has a Tao heart, which can only be obtained after reaching the pinnacle of the great Tao. The God Emperor wanted to take my Tao heart and use it to break through his shackles. But how could I let him do as he wished and destroy my Tao heart? Since the great Tao exists, can't the God Emperor still form a Tao heart?" "Of course." In response to Yi Zichen's question, The five elements' great emperor didn't deny it. Zhou Wu can naturally comprehend his Tao heart on his own, but it's not as simple as you think. The Tao doesn't actually exist. It's a Tao that countless predecessors stripped away from the laws and comprehended. When one comprehends the Tao to its pinnacle, they form a Tao heart. Once a Tao heart appears, the Tao is complete, and it becomes easier for future generations to cultivate. Since ancient times, I've been the only one to comprehend the great Tao of the five elements. By destroying my Tao heart, I also destroyed the great Tao of the five elements. If you want to regain your Tao heart, you'll have to forge a new path of the great Tao of the five elements. Even if Zhou Wu comprehended 10,000 Taos and condensed a Tao heart, he'd have to figure it out on his own. The amount of mental energy required to do so is unimaginable. Right now, your understanding of the Tao is still shallow. You don't have too many shackles when walking the great Tao of the five elements, but if you want to reach great success in the future, you'll have a taste of its difficulties. Tao heart. This was truly a novel concept for Yi Zichen. He'd never guessed that the pinnacle of the Tao was to condense the heart. As he was lost in thought, the five elements' great emperor spoke again. The armory is filled with countless treasures. You chose the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, which is truly fate. However, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's appearance in your hands means that it'll be very difficult for my bloodline to reach the pinnacle again. The five elements' great emperor's tone was bleak. From his tone, Yi Zichen felt as if he were a lonely hero. It was easy to imagine that when the five elements' great emperor was at his peak, his family was undoubtedly one of the God Realm's peak clans. After the five elements' great emperor's death, the God Emperor was bound to suppress his descendants. It was only natural that they'd be in decline. However, what Yi Zichen couldn't understand was why this treasure alone would make it so difficult for the five elements' great emperor's bloodline to return to its peak. Was there something special about the Yao Ceiling Pagoda? But that's fine. I can see that you're also the Emperor's Star, one of heaven's chosen emperors, and that you cultivate the Tao of the five elements. The armory is filled with countless treasures, yet you chose the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Junior, you and I are fated to meet. I originally wanted to leave this fortune for my descendants, but now, there's no harm in giving it to you. As soon as he finished speaking, the five elements' great emperor waved his hand, and a jade pendant that was only a quarter of its original size landed in Yi Zichen's hands. This jade pendant is the key to Star Emperor North Star's inheritance. There are a total of 4 keys, and I have one. As for whether or not you'll be able to enter, that'll depend on your luck. The 5 diagrams in this hall were created while I was comprehending the great Tao of the 5 elements Tao heart. Although my Tao heart has already been destroyed, with this as a reference, your path should be a bit smoother. There's no need for you to condense your heart according to my understanding. You can do as you please. This Yao Ceiling Pagoda was my favorite plaything back in the day. It has a total of 4 floors. Inside are a few pets I captured. If you're strong enough to open it, it might help you in the future. Chapter 1109. The foundation of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's first floor. As soon as the 5 elements' great emperor finished speaking, the last wisp of his soul within the Yao Ceiling Pagoda dissipated. For a long time, Yi Zichen's ears reverberated with the great emperor's desolate, helpless words. From accepting the landscape paintings as their master to their conversation in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, the great emperor's final words had all been about getting revenge for him. It was obvious that Zhou Wu had used despicable methods to kill him. This was an obsession the great emperor would never be able to erase. Yi Zichen stood in the great hall for a long time, but he didn't try to comprehend the paintings. He was sure that if he really did try, it would take up a lot of time. His body was still outside the axe gang, so he couldn't meditate too deeply. He had to stay vigilant at all times. The hall was constructed like an ancient royal palace. There was a door behind the 5 elements' great emperor's throne. There were 5 symbols on the door. After looking at them, Yi Zichen knew that if he wanted to open it, he needed the power of the 5 elements. He circulated the power of the 5 elements in his arms and pushed the door open. The 5 symbols lit up one after another. With a loud bang, Yi Zichen pushed the door open without even needing to use any strength. He stepped into the rear courtyard of the palace and saw countless luxuriant immortal herbs. The herb garden stretched so far that he couldn't see the end of it. Furthermore, there were quite a few people inside, carefully tending to the herb garden. Most of them were sky immortals and immortal kings. There were even a few supreme-level experts among them. There were several rooms around the herb garden. Pill refining room, artifact refining room, the talisman room. Yi Zichen's appearance startled the busy crowd. In an instant, they all put down what they were doing and bowed to Yi Zichen. Master! Over 10,000 sky immortals, immortal kings, and even supremes called him master. Even Yi Zichen, who'd seen his fair share of worldly affairs, couldn't help but be shocked. Suddenly, he recalled what the 5 elements' great emperor had told him. These were all pets he'd captured in the past. Were they all Yao? Yi Zichen suppressed his shock and turned to the crowd. Which one of you is in charge? With that, 2 men and 1 woman stepped out of the crowd. Although they didn't reveal their auras, Yi Zichen could sense their boundless spiritual energy. Even Yi Zichen felt a faint sense of pressure when he faced them. This subordinate is Jiao Qi, the leader of the 1st floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. My true form is a scarlet flame leopard and I'm a 9th stage Earth Supreme. These 2 are Lei Zhen and Meng Huirong. Their true forms are Black Tiger and Blue Sky Sparrow respectively. They're both 9th stage Earth Supremes, and they assist me in managing this floor. When he mentioned the other 2, Yi Zichen looked towards them as well. Lei Zhen, who stood beside Jiao Qi, appeared especially tall and sturdy. His gaze was sharp and fierce. When he sensed Yi Zichen's gaze, he intentionally retracted his ferocious expression and nodded with a smile. Blue Yunk smiled sweetly at Yi Zichen. She was petite to begin with, and when paired with her sweet smile, she looked like a girl next door. It was easy for anyone to want to protect her. But this little sister was a 9th stage Earth Supreme expert, the deputy commander of the 1st floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. On the Divine Mountain, there were Earth Supremes, Sky Supremes, Diviners, and Rulers. These 4 levels were further divided into 9 substages. For example, after reaching the 9th stage, the 3 of them could become Sky Supremes. 9th stage Earth Supremes. When he heard their strength, Yi Zichen's heart thudded. The 5 elements' great emperor lived up to his reputation as a peak existence of the god race. Even a random pet he'd captured was an Earth Supreme level expert. And this was only the 1st floor, yet there were already Earth Supremes. According to the divisions of strength, if the 2nd floor was Sky Supremes and the 3rd Diviners, then wouldn't the 4th floor be Rulers? In the god race, sovereigns were considered peak experts. Any sovereign could cause the entire Divine Mountain to tremble with a single stomp of his foot. If the 5 elements' great emperor had captured even Rulers, Yi Zichen didn't dare think about it any further. However, Jiao Qi's introduction hadn't stopped. There are over 700 Earth Supremes, over 5,000 immortal kings, and countless sky immortals. Among them, there were more than 400 alchemists, and 15 of them were 9th-grade alchemists. There are over 270 artifact refiners, 12 of whom are 9th rank or higher. There are over 520 talisman masters, 7 of whom are 9th rank or higher. In truth, this is only the 1st floor, so there aren't that many experts. In truth, this is only the 1st floor. If Master can open the 2nd and 3rd floors, you'll see even more experts. I heard that the 4th floor even has ruler-level experts. Gulp. Yi Zichen's mind went blank. Pill refiners, artifact refiners, and talisman masters were rare existences in the god realm, but here in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, there were over 100 of them? There were even Earth Supremes? There were over 700 of them. On the fourth floor, the five elements' great emperor had really captured rulers. In the Yao realm, ruler level Yao should be considered Yao emperors, right? He'd captured them just like that? Yi Zichen couldn't calm his shock, but when he considered that he was their master, he had to maintain his status, so he found a random topic to talk about. Then what are you doing here? Yi Zichen arched his brows. The old master left us here to take care of the herb gardens, as well as to refine artifacts, pills, and talismans. For hundreds of thousands of years, we've adhered to the old master's orders and dared not slack off in the slightest, replied Jiao Qi. Go to hell. What was there to be steady about? Never mind Yi Zichen, even a random supreme, diviner, or even a ruler would freak out if they heard this. Hundreds of thousands of years. The Yao ceiling pagoda had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and they hadn't slacked off in the slightest. They'd continuously refined pills, artifacts, and talismans. What kind of wealth was that? Besides, this was only the first floor. The second, third, and fourth floors were just like the first floor. They'd accumulated resources for hundreds of thousands of years. No wonder the five elements' great emperor had said that without the Yao ceiling pagoda, his family clan had no hope of rising to prominence. If the entire Yao ceiling pagoda was opened, they'd become a complete peak-level family clan. And a peak-level family clan with hundreds of thousands of years of foundation. With this kind of foundation, what was the God Emperor? Yi Zichen was nothing. Now that he had this kind of resources, never mind the God Emperor, Yi Zichen was confident he could even take down the God Emperor's old man. And the God Emperor? However, he couldn't bite off more than he could chew. Although the Yao ceiling pagoda's foundation was deep, what he'd obtained was only the tip of the iceberg. It was better to play it safe. Of course, with this kind of foundation, he could pull off a few tricks. Chapter 11:10. Wait for me. There were countless experts in the Yao ceiling pagoda. So long as he let them out, they'd be considered a peak faction even on the divine mountains. However, this was still the territory of the gods. A faction formed from the Yao ceiling pagoda couldn't be considered orthodox. Furthermore, Yi Zichen was a man of his word. Upheaval had been founded for a long time. He couldn't abandon the gang he'd poured his blood, sweat, and tears into just because he'd obtained the Yao ceiling pagoda. He wanted to use upheaval to throw the stagnant waters of the god race into utter chaos. Of course, he still had to use the Yao ceiling pagoda. Forget about Supremes. He was currently at the foot of the divine mountains. If Supremes appeared, they might ascend to the divine mountains or teleport directly to the Yao realm. To be safe, Yi Zichen wouldn't use them. But even if he used only Immortal King Yao, who'd dare provoke so many Immortal King Yao in his gang? Even if the entire 72 districts gathered thousands of Immortal King Yao, it would be difficult to gather that many. When the time came, never mind the Green Gang, even if the entire 72 districts ganged up on him, he wouldn't be afraid. As he considered this, Yi Zichen's heart burned with passion. Suddenly, he recalled the god race's Shao family, which controlled tribulation lightning. Just you wait. One day I'll pay you a personal visit and properly thank you for your love. The Yao on the first floor of the Yao ceiling pagoda couldn't help but tremble at Yi Zichen's sinister gaze. Even the 9th stage Earth Supremes could tell that Yi Zichen's true strength was no more than a peak immortal king, but when they sensed his gaze, the depths of their souls trembled irresistibly. Jiao Qi, Lei Zhen, and the others glanced at each other. It seemed their new master wasn't as simple as they'd imagined. Yi Zichen ignored the Yao's strange looks, retracted his gaze, and smiled warmly. You can come with me, right? Of course. As he said this, Yi Zichen sensed the urgency in Jiao Qi and the others' voices. They'd already been here for far too long. Take Jiao Qi, for example. When they first captured him, he was just a human immortal Yao, but now he was a peak Earth Supreme expert. Even though he was the leader of the demons here, and there were no disputes or wars here, He did not have to worry about food and clothing. He even got married here and had children. But no matter what, he wanted to see the outside world again. Especially the demon realm. He missed home too much. Almost all the heaven demons imprisoned here were like this. They wanted to leave. When the 5 Elements' great emperor had captured them, he'd probably only ask them to refine pills, forge weapons, refine talismans, or take care of herbs. Given his rank, he didn't need them to do anything for him. However, this new master was different. This new master was only a celestial king. If they had the chance, they could go out and take a look. Alright, as long as you can get out. I also know that you guys are too tired of staying here. As long as you perform well, you will have a chance to get out. How about this? Jiao Qi and the rest of you stay here. I'll bring a few immortal king-level heavenly demons out first. You can recommend a few to me. As soon as Yi Zichen said this, an undisguisable sense of disappointment surfaced on the faces of Jiao Qi and the other supremes. However, this new master also said that they would not have a chance to leave in the future. Besides, given their master's current strength, he'd definitely need them in the future. They'd already waited for hundreds of thousands of years. A few more wouldn't matter. Yi Zichen left the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. By the time he emerged, it was already dark outside. 2 burly men followed behind him. They were the guards Jiao Qi had chosen for Yi Zichen. Zhu Kong and Zhu Tai. They were brothers. They were both peak immortal kings, and their true forms were netherworld porcupines. Netherworld porcupines weren't a small race amongst the Yao race. They could be considered mid-grade divine beasts. Don't be fooled by their lack of agility, but in a real fight they could move like phantoms. These 2 brothers were also symbiotic bodies and could communicate telepathically. In a fight they could seize the initiative. That was why Jiao Qi had sent them out. After all, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda was full of Earth's supreme-level experts, but these 2 immortal king-level heavenly demons had come out. The 2 brothers had been suppressing their anger. They wanted to fight for their master's honor. They wanted to win face for their fellow immortal king-level heavenly demons. However, they needed an opportunity to show off their skills. Their master hadn't said a single word since leaving the pagoda. The 2 brothers had been suppressing their anger to no end. They didn't dare disturb Yi Zichen. All they could do was stand guard on either side of him. The Wu family is quite perceptive. As soon as Yi Zichen left the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he received a message from Wu Di. It mentioned that Jing Yunan had broken off her engagement with the Kai family. Judging from the Wu family's actions, it seemed they wanted to matchmake Wu Di and Jing Yunan. From Wu Di's perspective, marrying Jing Yunan was a wonderful thing. However, he didn't want his family to use Jing Yunan repeatedly, so he hadn't responded. His thoughts were in a mess. All he could do was ask Yi Zichen for help. After reading the message, Yi Zichen smiled and shook his head, then turned to Zhu Kong and Zhu Tai. Let's go. Follow me back to Raging Flame City. Raging Flame City, the Inn of the 100 Daybreak. Although Yi Zichen hadn't checked in yet, his room was still empty. Yi Zichen sat in his private room, sipping some immortal brew. Zhu Kong and Zhu Tai stood guard outside the door. Wu Di sat across from Yi Zichen, clenching his cup in silence. Thanks to Wei Jie and the others' constant supply of medicine, Wu Di's injuries had mostly healed. Only his arm bones hadn't fully healed yet, so he was wrapped in bandages. However, that didn't affect his daily movements. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Wu Di was already on the verge of breaking through to the mid-stage human immortal realm. Given just a little more time, he'd definitely break through to the mid-stage human immortal level. Master, did you call me back in such a hurry just to have a meal with me? In truth, Yi Zichen quite liked Wu Di's personality, but when it came to personal matters, he wasn't the decisive sort. In this regard, he was a bit like Yi Zichen back in the modern realm. Yi Zichen gently swirled his wine cup, then smiled playfully at Wu Di. After a long while, Wu Di set his cup on the table and knelt to the ground. Master, please grant me my wish. Yi Zichen took this abrupt turn of events as a matter of course. He smiled, set his cup on the table, and lifted it with a wave of immortal energy. You've always wanted Jing Yunan. Since the Wu family has their own plans, why should I grant them your wish? But, do you think she's a commodity? Wu Di shook his head. Chapter 11:11. Master Yi. Half a month later. With Yi Zichen's help and the Wu family's meticulous planning, Wu Di and Jing Yunan finally succeeded. Yi Zichen merely sent his blessings, but didn't attend their wedding. Although he was a bit disappointed that he hadn't been able to see his master, Wu Di knew that his master had other, more important matters to attend to. The Wu family used the wedding as an excuse to pass on his position to Wu Di. In order to help his disciple take control of the Wu family as soon as possible, Yi Zichen found 4 Immortal King-level Heavenly Yao from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and had them stay by his disciple's side. Raging Flame City, Upheaval. This was where Yi Zichen had started everything. He'd taken all of the Sky Immortals and Immortal King-level Heavenly Yao from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda with him. Worried that Wei Jie and the others wouldn't be strong enough to convince so many Sky Immortals and Immortal King-level Heavenly Yao, Yi Zichen had Lei Jin stay as well. He'd serve as the gang's vice leader and help Wei Jie and the others expand their influence. In short, with the support of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's resources, Upheaval expanded at an astonishing rate. In just half a year, Upheaval had appeared in the Mortal, Profound, Earth, and Sky Great Districts, but their headquarters remained in Raging Flame City. The Sky Great District was the strongest of the 72 districts. It occupied far more land than the Mortal, Profound, and Earth Great Districts. Clans and clans stood in great numbers in this district, and heroes rose to power. Countless peak-level factions had settled in the district, each occupying a city. Ice Blue City. This was one of the Sky Great District's most prosperous cities. The Skyspan Assembly's headquarters were located here. Under the Skyspan Assembly's leadership, the entire city gradually became a trading hub for the 72 districts, and even the lands beneath the Divine Mountains. Just standing in the city was like standing in a bustling market. The streets were filled with weapons, pills, and talismans. Countless adventurers shuttled through the city to trade. Countless people from the other Divine Mountains traveled tens of thousands of kilometers just to buy goods. It was obvious that the city was a marketplace. In the most flourishing part of the city, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, there was a 6-story shop, only 1 story lower than the Skyspan Assembly's auction house. At this moment, there was a cauldron of voices. The decorations of this shop were very ordinary. If it was on any other street, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, placed on this street and facing the luxury of other shops, this shop seemed very simple and crude. The signboard of the shop didn't have any design. It seemed to be just a piece of wood with the words, "Sundry Shop," written on it in ink. That was the signboard of the shop. But even so, it didn't affect the shop's business. High officials, nobles, aristocratic families, and nobles would all come here. After coming here, they didn't dare to be careless. They carefully stood inside the shop, looking at the goods inside and then at the stairs. The drunkard had an ulterior motive. Their purpose of coming here was not to buy the goods here, but to meet someone. Dong, dong, dong. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from the stairs. In an instant, the nobles who were strolling around the shop all looked over and scrambled to get closer to the staircase. Among them, there were countless Immortal King experts and countless full-circle heaven immortal experts squeezing towards the stairs. "All of you, stand down," the lean man on the stairs shouted with a frown. A wave of air suddenly appeared around his body, forcing the Immortal Kings and Heaven Immortals who surrounded him to take a few steps back. Those Immortal Kings and Heaven Immortals also calmed down at this moment. When the lean man walked down the stairs, an Immortal King expert spoke up. "Manager Jiao, I wonder if Grandmaster Yi is free today?" The surrounding nobles looked nervous as well. They came here to see Grandmaster Yi. Yes. The lean man nodded faintly, and then pointed at an ordinary-looking middle-aged man in the crowd. You. The man whom the lean man pointed at was suddenly stunned. In an instant, an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. This man's strength was also at the Immortal King level, but compared to the peak Immortal King experts in the shop, he was still quite a bit weaker. After pushing the people around him away, the middle-aged man rushed to the lean man's side. At the same time, the lean man didn't waste any more time. He turned around and was about to lead the man upstairs. Manager Jiao. Seeing that the man in front of them was about to leave, the nobles and immortal kings rushed forward. However, before they could take more than a few steps, they were forced back by the lean man. This is not a place where you can behave atrociously. Under the angry roar, the immortal kings all shut their mouths in fear. The lean man narrowed his eyes and glanced at the immortal kings and nobles a few times. We have a lot of treasures here. Although they can't compare to the Skyspan Assembly, they are still rare items for your clansmen. You can buy some here before you go back. As soon as he finished speaking, the lean man led the man he had chosen upstairs. The moment they left, a middle-aged man with a mellow smile on his face walked into the shop. He cupped his hands at the immortal kings and heaven immortals and gestured for them to enter. Everyone, this way please. Sir, I've brought him. In a room on the top floor, the lean man stood outside the door and bowed toward the room. Before long, a low murmur came from inside, and the door opened automatically. After entering through the door, he saw a man in a white robe sitting in the room. Beside him stood a young maid in plain clothes with bright eyes and white teeth. The servant girl held a cup of immortal wine in her hand. Whenever the man's cup was empty, she would pour him another cup. Sir. The lean man cupped his hands towards the white-robed man. The white-robed man also put down the wine glass in his hand and pointed to the opposite position. Sit. The man didn't suspect anything. He sat down across from him and heard the white-robed man speak. How should I address you? I'm Wei Xingye. The ordinary-looking and somewhat bloated man grinned, his fingers constantly rubbing the jasper ring on his thumb. Boss Wei. The white-robed man nodded with a faint smile. He looked Wei Xingye up and down, then raised his eyebrows. Do you know why I chose you out of all the immortal kings and nobles? I don't know. In truth, Wei Xingye had come because he'd heard that Grandmaster Yi could refine the sea-condensing pill. However, this Grandmaster was very hot-tempered. He didn't know when he would refine the pill or how many he would refine. Wei Xingye was about to condense his sea, so he'd come here to try his luck. He hadn't expected to run into great luck. On the way up, he'd secretly rejoiced at his good luck. But now that he heard Grandmaster Yi. Chapter 11-12. Who was he? The more Wei Xingye thought about it, the more flustered he became. Beads of sweat appeared on his face, and his fingers rubbed the jasper ring even more frequently. He didn't think there was anything special about him, and he'd never met this Grandmaster Yi before. Could it be someone from his family? That shouldn't be the case. He wasn't from the 72 district. Rather, he was from the southern Divine Mountain, near the river Styx. He'd had to go through many twists and turns to get here. Or was it for money? But on second thought, although he was running a small business, it couldn't compare to Grandmaster Ye's general store. Disregarding everything else, just this building alone was enough. In the heart of Ice Blue City, if he wanted to buy this building, he'd probably have to sell his entire family. Just what did this Grandmaster Yi want? Boss Wei, there's no need to panic. I did invite you here for a reason, but it's definitely not to threaten your interests. The white-robed man smiled calmly, indicating for Wei Xingye to relax. Then he arched his brows and said, I heard that your family lives near the river Styx and often crosses the river to trade with the Yao? Wei Xingye froze. The white-robed man's eyes darted around. What, you can't say? Our young master asked you a question, so just answer it. Who cares about your insignificant information? Still hiding it? Don't you want the sea condensing pill? The servant girl pouted and snorted. Huirong. He glared at the servant girl, who pursed her lips and didn't say anything else. Wei Xingye was a slick person, and the sea condensing pill truly was important to him. Although the servant girl's words seemed like a joke, no one could be sure if Grandmaster Yi had instructed her to say that. Pursing his lips into a smile, Wei Xingye replied, Grandmaster Yi is right. I do have business with the demon realm. However, my business isn't particularly large. At most, I trade with the ordinary Yao clans. I don't have any contact with the divine beast clans. Of course, the Yao realm is as famous as the God realm. I'm afraid only a large merchant guild like the Skyspan Association, which has connections even above the divine mountains, can do business with the divine beast clans. But for Boss Wei to be able to cooperate with other races in the demon realm, he is quite capable. The white-robed man nodded, and Wei Xingye followed suit. Grandmaster Yi, you flatter me. I'm just close to the netherworld sea. After the unification of the godly king, the relationship between the demon realm and the divine realm is not that tense, so I found a way to make a living here. Actually, it wasn't that I had any tricks up my sleeve. If it was someone who could endure the hardship, anyone could do it. Why? Could it be that Grandmaster Yi is also interested in this aspect? If that's the case, I can introduce some demon clans to Grandmaster Yi. Businessmen were businessmen. No matter what, they would always value their own interests. Wei Xingye was like that. He knew that he was asking Grandmaster Yi to do something for him, but he could not help but ask as he spoke. Our young master won't go so far as to compete with you for that little source of income. The servant girl wrinkled her nose and snorted. This time, the white-robed man did not stop them. Clearly, this was also his intention. Only when he saw the slightly awkward smile on Wei Xingye's face did the white-robed man speak again. You're worrying too much, Boss Wei. If I really wanted to compete with you for this, did you really think you could beat me? Wei Xingye shivered. He thought about it. For this building to occupy such a large piece of land, it was easy to imagine how wealthy it was. Then there were the housekeeper and servant girls. Even as a mid-stage immortal king, Wei Xingye couldn't see through them. This Grandmaster Yi was merely an immortal king. Look at the first floor. There were pills, artifacts, talismans, everything you could ever imagine. There was no doubt that a major family clan was supporting this place. If Grandmaster Yi really wanted to eat this meal, it was just as he said. There was no way Wei Xingye could beat him. When he saw Wei Xingye's expression shift, Yi Zichen smiled indifferently. It seems you've thought things through, Boss Wei. Grandmaster Yi, I'm not the type to beat around the bush. What exactly do you want to say to me? Please speak plainly, said Wei Xingye, cupping his hands. In truth, I brought you here to ask you a question. You've done business with the Yao realm for so long. Have you ever heard of a woman called Xia Kiki? Grandmaster Yi was Yi Zichen. Half a year ago, he'd arrived in Ice Blue City and bought this building from the Skyspan Trading Company. With the inheritance of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he no longer came here to refine pills to fill the hole in his gang's finances. What he cared about was the flow of information here. With the Skyspan Trading Company around, people from any region would come here. It wouldn't even be strange to see people from the Yao realm here. That was exactly what Yi Zichen was interested in. He wanted to learn what he wanted from these people. Before he ascended, the white-robed man had told him about Xia Kiki in the Yao realm. In truth, he'd been dubious. Coincidentally, Wei Xingye frequented the Yao realm all year round. Yi Zichen wanted to see if he could glean any useful information from him. Xia Kiki? Wei Xingye frowned. If Yao are surnamed Xia, then she's definitely a dragon. Grandmaster Yi, you might really be overestimating me. Although I'm somewhat famous in the Yao realm, I'm not so famous that I can interact with dragons. As soon as an expert made a move, it was obvious. The fact that Wei Xingye could tell that Xia Kiki was a dragon meant that he really did spend a lot of time in the Yao realm. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to learn that the dragon race was Xia. In truth, Yi Zichen hadn't expected much, but hearing that he really didn't know anything made him feel a little lonely. Even if it's just a rumor? Grandmaster Yi, since you've asked, you naturally know the status of the dragon race in the Yao realm. I've only interacted with ordinary clans. I've never even interacted with divine beasts, let alone peak-level clans. Even if there really was a rumor, I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it. Wei Xingye sighed, then looked at Yi Zichen's lonely expression. But if Grandmaster Yi really needs it, then we can exchange contact information. When I get back, I'll ask around about Xia Kiki. All right. Yi Zichen's expression shook, then he frowned. It's not just Xia Kiki. There's also Su Yen, Su Luer and Lu Lu. They should all be Yao. There's also Su Yun. He should be from the River Styx. If you can find any information about the three of them, and if I can verify its authenticity, I'll reward you with a sea-condensing pill. Wei Xingye's breathing quickened, but it wasn't because of the reward. Rather, it was because of the people Yi Zichen wanted him to ask around. In the Yao realm, certain surnames were fixed. For example, Xia was a dragon, while Su was a nine-tailed fox. The people Grandmaster Yi wanted him to find were all peak-level clans. Chapter 11-13. Upheaval's rapid expansion. Wei Xingye didn't reply for a long time. Yi Zichen, already anxious, couldn't help but frown. Is there a problem? When he heard that, Wei Xingye grimaced. Contact with peak Yao clans was far beyond his abilities. Given his current strength, he could only play around with the ordinary clans of the Yao realm. Furthermore, the Yao realm was enormous. Its territory was more than 3 times the size of the God realm. The peak clans were like existences on a divine mountain. If he wanted to obtain information about them, it would be as difficult as reaching for the moon from the highest heavens. Then there was Su Yun, who resided in the Nether Sea. Among the various factions, including the shamans, the Nether Sea was the most mysterious. The souls of the dead lived in the Nether Sea. If they wanted information about him, there was only one word: difficult. However, Yi Zichen's offer was far too tempting. If he could verify the authenticity of his information, he'd give him a sea-condensing pill. This was an opportunity he couldn't pass up, not even his family. Although it would be difficult, he had to take a gamble. Besides, he wouldn't lose out in any way. As he considered this, Wei Xingye's expression froze. He knit his brows and said, Grandmaster Yi, the people you're looking for are all from peak clans. Although I have some strength in the Yao realm, it's still extremely difficult to come into contact with them. I can't promise you that I'll be able to find the people you mentioned, but I'll do everything in my power to find them. Wei Xingye didn't beat his chest and boast about leaving everything to him. Grandmaster Yi was clearly no ordinary person. If Wei Xingye exaggerated too much, he'd only annoy Yi Zichen. In truth, Yi Zichen had already considered the difficulties involved. Hearing Wei Xingye's reply was no surprise. Then I'll have to trouble you, Boss Wei. No problem. Wei Xingye laughed heartily, then hesitated. Yi Zichen naturally knew what he was thinking. When Yi Zichen saw this, he naturally knew what he was thinking. He said, concoct sea-condensing pills. You should know my rules before coming. Yes. With a flip of his hand, 3 sets of ingredients appeared in Wei Xingye's hand, along with a spatial ring. He placed them all on the table. Here are the ingredients for 3 sea-condensing pills, as well as a service fee of 100 million. Please take a look, Grandmaster Yi. Wei Xingye's heart ached when he said this. 100 million was a small problem for him. In any case, he was a Celestial King realm expert, and he often traveled between the demon realm and the immortal realm, doing the business of reselling things. His wealth couldn't be said to be astonishing, but he could be considered to be in the upper echelons of the Celestial Kings. What pained him the most were these 3 sets of materials. He had paid a huge price to obtain these 3 sets of sea-condensing pills materials. It would be fine if he succeeded, but if he failed, then he would lose half of his life savings. Yi Zichen merely glanced at it indifferently, then told his servant girl to put it away without even touching it. Come back in 3 days to collect the pills. With that, Yi Zichen waved his sleeves and gave the lean man a meaningful glance. Send the guest off. Young master, why is Jiao Qi the housekeeper while I, who is so cute, is a maid? Huai Rong cannot accept this. As soon as Wei Xingye stepped out the door, the plain-clothed servant girl objected. In truth, she was one of the 3 commanders of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, Meng Huai Rong, and the housekeeper just now was one of the commanders, Jiao Qi. Yi Zichen had left the immortal kings and sky immortal experts to upheaval so they could expand their influence. He'd always wanted to be a Lone Ranger, but Meng Huai Rong was too spoiled. With no other choice, Yi Zichen called them out, bought this building from the Skyspan Trading Company, and turned it into a general goods store. When he called them out, Yi Zichen was worried they'd ascend. Fortunately, they didn't cause any anomalies, so Yi Zichen relaxed. But this general goods store, from the manager to the servants, was filled with Earth Supremes. Yi Zichen really didn't know what would happen if outsiders found out about this. Meng Huai Rong pouted angrily. She had a pure heart. If he had to find a word to describe her, he'd have to say that she was pure. Yi Zichen reached out and patted her on the head. He couldn't help but laugh. You don't understand, do you? Although you're a servant, you're by my side every day. In ancient times, eunuchs were sometimes even more important than nobles. Although you're not a eunuch, you're still far from being a eunuch. Jiao Qi is the manager, but he has to manage the general goods store. All you have to do is pour me wine every day. Isn't that great? Meng Huai Rong blinked. Although she didn't quite understand what Yi Zichen meant by eunuchs, she felt like he made a lot of sense. Yi Zichen didn't dwell on the subject any longer. How's upheaval doing lately? Wei Jie came by a few days ago, but you were in seclusion, so Jiao Qi and I didn't disturb you. Recently, upheaval's growth has been fierce. They've already set up branches in all 72 districts, and they're expanding into the other great districts. They've also set up branches in a few of the Sky Great District's major cities. The previous peak-level factions might have sensed upheaval's growth, and they're already showing signs of joining forces. As soon as he said this, Meng Huai Rong's adorable face flashed with a frightening cold light. Master, would you like me and Jiao Qi to take a few of our brothers and give them a good beating? Even Yi Zichen was taken aback by the sudden change in her expression. Just a moment ago, she'd looked like a cute little girl next door, but now she looked like a murderous demon. He rapped her on the head, then gestured for her to pour him a cup of wine. How many times have I told you? This is a peaceful society. Don't fight and kill. Besides, hearing you say all that, it'll affect your beauty. Didn't I tell you before? In the future, you'll have to walk the path of cuteness. But those people don't know how to appreciate favors, Wei Jie said. He knows our gang's growth affects quite a few people's interests. He tried to befriend them, but they wouldn't give him any face. Not giving Wei Jie face is the same as not giving you face. Meng Huai Rong batted her eyes and snorted indignantly. Just leave it to Wei Jie to handle. I gave him so many resources and manpower. If he can't even suppress a measly 72 districts, he'll disappoint me far too much. Chapter 11:14. Qi Mei had come knocking. Almost as soon as the door was kicked open, Yi Zichen put down his cup. Meng Huairong appeared by his side and wrapped her fingers around the newcomer's neck. Yi! Before the newcomer could speak, he felt a wave of killing intent envelop him. His throat bobbed up and down, then he heard the person Meng Huairong had grabbed by the neck scream. Yi Zichen, you still want to kill me? You heartless man, I came to find you directly after I came out, but you actually abandoned me after you slept with me. At the same time, Jiao Qi led a few of the shop's employees over. His face was covered in fluorescent powder, and his eyes were sinister. However, when they heard the newcomer's words, they all stopped. Only Meng Huairong frowned. Jiao Qi, what the hell are you doing? How could you let someone barge into the young master's room? To her surprise, Jiao Qi kept shooting her meaningful glances. Meng Huairong looked at him in confusion. The newcomer wasn't looking for trouble. Rather, it was Qi Mei, the one who dragged Yi Zichen to the Five Elements' great emperor's tomb. Meng Huairong might be acting cute in front of Yi Zichen, but don't forget, she was still an Earth Supreme level expert. Even though Qi Mei had obtained some good fortune from the mausoleum and was now a Celestial King realm expert, compared to a 9th stage Earth Supreme, she was still far inferior. Huairong, let her go, sighed Yi Zichen. Meng Huairong didn't hesitate and released her. Jiao Qi cupped his hands at Yi Zichen. Young master, this young lady said that she was your wife when she came here, so, I understand. You guys can go back to your own business. There was no need for Jiao Qi to say anything. Yi Zichen already knew what she'd done. She'd definitely said she was his wife. Jiao Qi didn't believe her, but he still had to treat her with caution. She'd taken advantage of his momentary daze to cover his eyes with fluorescent powder and run up to him. If it were anyone else, it might be impossible, but to Qi Mei, anything was possible. Yi Zichen cupped his hands in greeting. Jiao Qi and the others left, then turned to Meng Huairong. Huairong, go with them. Yi Zichen nodded and followed Jiao Qi out of the room, then shrugged helplessly. You're really haunting me. I've already hidden here. How can I still let you find me? To his surprise, Qi Mei, who was standing at the door, threw herself at him and burst into tears. Feeling the trembling body in his arms and the wet clothes, Qi Mei really cried. Yi Zichen couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. What's wrong with you? You're a heartless man. You used me and then abandoned me. I went through so much trouble to find you, but I didn't expect that you actually had another woman. Have you forgotten our vows of eternal love? Have you forgotten the sincere love we once had? To be honest, Yi Zichen didn't dare say that he'd seen countless women, but he'd spent time with quite a few. It was his first time encountering someone like Qi Mei who could lie through her teeth without blushing or gasping for breath. A pledge of eternal love? True love? He must have transmigrated. Yi Zichen didn't even try to comfort her. Instead, he pushed her to the side and continued drinking. Qi Mei looked at Yi Zichen with teary eyes and sniffled. You have to make it up to me. Tell me about it. Yi Zichen glanced at her indifferently, then filled his cup with wine. Hey, it looks like you're doing pretty well. Your shop's doing pretty well, and it doesn't seem like you're lacking the money to refine pills for me. How about, just give me a condensing pill, all right? Qi Mei giggled, then blushed as if she were a bit embarrassed. No, said Yi Zichen decisively. Fine. How about this? You can waive my labor fees, all right? Hey Yi Zichen, we've been through life and death together. Besides, you don't seem like someone who's lacking a few million yuan. No way. Then at least give me a discount. No way. Sweetie. When she saw how cold-blooded Yi Zichen was, Qi Mei had no choice but to act spoiled. It wasn't easy for me to beg my friends for these ingredients, and there's also the money. Right now, I'm penniless and in debt. Just do me a favor and give me a discount. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll have to work to pay back my debt. Alright, go on then. When you're done, tell me your card number and I'll cheer you on. Yi Zichen's expression was as indifferent as ever. He even lifted his cup and took a sip. Qi Mei, who was sitting not far away, moved her lips. Her bright eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. She glared viciously at Yi Zichen, then pulled the ingredients for the 3C condensing pills from her spatial ring, as well as the labor fees Yi Zichen had promised. You're ruthless enough. Yi Zichen slapped the ingredients and labor fees on the table, glanced at them indifferently, then waved his hand and put them away. When she saw how he'd collected them without the slightest hesitation, Qi Mei gnashed her teeth in hatred. She clenched her fists so hard they creaked. You miser! It wasn't like Chi Mei hadn't stayed in the Sky Great District before, especially in Ice Blue City. Every inch of land here was worth its weight in gold. Just the buildings alone were worth at least 10 billion, and that was just a conservative estimate. She didn't dare go overboard. On her way here, she'd seen the pills, artifacts, and talismans in the shop. They were all worth a fortune. Yi Zichen was already so rich, yet he was still stingy with her? Just the thought of it infuriated her. When he saw Chi Mei's unwilling expression, Yi Zichen couldn't help but arch his brows and laugh. You call me miser? Aren't you being a little too petty? You've already obtained the resources of the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's Mausoleum. I've already seen thousands of sea-condensing pill ingredient. You're much richer than I am now, so don't act like you're poor, all right? Who obtained the mausoleum's resources? After I went in, my fire element reached a minor level, and I went from a sky immortal to an immortal king. How am I richer than you? Don't talk drivel. The way I see it, you're the one who obtained it. When I left, I couldn't find you anywhere, and now you've bought a place. Humph. Chi Mei glared at him angrily. From the look of it, she wasn't lying. However, only the 3 of them had gone in. He'd taken the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and left. Chi Mei hadn't obtained the inheritance either. Didn't that mean? I really didn't get any of the resources, but I did obtain a bit of the inheritance. Aren't the resources only the 5 Elements Great Emperor's descendants can touch? I'm just an outsider. You're right. When Chi Mei heard that, she suddenly understood. She scrambled to her feet, her body trembling even more violently than when Yi Zichen had infuriated her. Chapter 11:15. A troublemaker. Chi Mei's expression wasn't fake in the slightest. She bit her lip as if she'd just heard the most shocking news in the world. Her eyes widened as she panted heavily and clenched her fists. She paced back and forth in the room, muttering to herself. No wonder he was in such a hurry to leave. He even told me Yi Zichen took all the treasures. That sincere look in his eyes scared me. She was clearly muttering to herself. When Yi Zichen heard that, he arched his brows despite himself. He pondered the relationship between Wu Yi and Chi Mei. If they were both of the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's bloodline, then there was no need for them to lie to each other. However, judging from Chi Mei's expression and her muttering, it really didn't seem like she was faking it. I'm so angry I'm about to die. For the sake of the ingredients for the sea-condensing pill, I sold everything I had and begged my grandparents to gather them all. Wu Yi. Why, I'm so angry. Inside the room, Chi Mei was still fuming. There were a few times when she wanted to lose her temper in the room. Perhaps it was because she remembered that she couldn't afford to pay for the things here if she broke them, so she held it in and paced back and forth while biting her lip. Next time I see him, I'm definitely going to teach him a lesson. She clenched her fists tightly, grabbed the immortal brew on the table, and poured a few mouthfuls into her mouth. Only then did she suppress the fire in her heart, and snorted to herself. She snorted and said, Are you sure you don't want to go look for him right now? Seeing how angry she was, Yi Zichen thought she'd grab her weapons and go split the spoils with Wu Yi. Who would have guessed she'd say, next time? What was she going to do now? Did she want to stay here forever? Chi Mei was absolutely a troublemaker. Yi Zichen had never felt at ease when he was with her. He didn't want to stay with this troublemaker. Of course I want to go look for him right now, but you still haven't given me the pill. If you run away by the time I go look for him, and he insists he doesn't have it, then wouldn't I be in big trouble? Chi Mei replied eloquently. Yi Zichen really didn't want to waste any more time with her, so he simply took a sea-condensing pill from his spatial ring and placed it on the table. Here's a sea-condensing pill for you. Hurry up and find Wu Yi to settle the score. Don't delay. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Zichen saw a gentle breeze blow past, and the pills on the table disappeared. Chi Mei nervously opened the pill. In fact, it wasn't just her. All the other immortal kings who obtained the sea-condensing pill did the same. She carefully felt the effects of the pill, then quickly put the cork back on the bottle. She was afraid that the pill's effects would spread and affect the success rate of core formation in the future. Little big brother, you're really bad. Since they had ready-made sea-condensing pills, why would they need so many things? They had suffered so much just to obtain these materials. If you have a ready-made one, just tell me. I have other ways to compensate you. As she spoke, she cast a flirtatious glance at Yizichin. Yizichin really had no way of dealing with this sort of woman. He rolled his eyes speechlessly and frowned. Don't talk to me like that. I've already given you the pill. Hurry up and leave. Do you really hate me that much? Chi Mei looked pitiful, her eyes watery and full of grievance. Her delicate features were wrinkled and her lips were pursed. She was utterly heartbroken. Yizichin knew exactly what kind of person she was. There was no way he'd fall for this. He nodded noncommittally, then smiled calmly at Chi Mei. That's right, I hate you that much. Is that so? Women flipped out faster than the pages of a book. Just a second ago, she was still so lovely and lovely. As soon as Yizichin finished speaking, her expression darkened, and a cold smile tugged at the corners of her lips. If you hadn't said that, I might have felt a bit guilty. But since you said that about me, then. Serves you right. Yizichin instantly sensed that something was wrong. He stared intently at Chi Mei. What do you mean by that? Nothing. Chi Mei smirked. I just caused a bit of trouble on my way here. That guy seems pretty strong in the Sky Great District. I'm just a weak woman. How could I possibly stand up to him? Don't you think so? I had no choice, so I said I was your wife. If you had the guts, come find me in Ice Blue City. If I calculate the time, they should be here by now. Chi Mei's expression was playful, and her mischievous eyes were filled with, "You bullied me, so I'll teach you a lesson." He'd known she was a troublemaker. Before Yizichin could say anything, he heard the sound of hurried footsteps from outside. She really had guessed correctly. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Jiao Qi glanced at Yizichin and Chi Mei, then said, Master, there's a group of people outside surrounding our general store. Their leader is yelling and yelling some really nasty things. Our people wanted to teach them a lesson, but I stopped them. I'm here to report this to you. Chi Mei, you. Not bad. He glared viciously at Chi Mei. They dared lead people to surround Yizichin's general store in Ice Blue City. Regardless of whether they knew Yizichin's strength or not, just based on the building alone, it was clear they were no ordinary people. Yet they dared to surround his store. Clearly, they were no ordinary people in the Sky Great District. Yizichin had wanted to live in seclusion in Raging Flame City, but Chi Mei had dragged him to the Five Elements' Great Emperor's tomb. Now he'd wanted to gather intelligence in Ice Blue City, but Chi Mei had ruined his plans. Yizichin finally understood. So long as Chi Mei was around, he'd never be able to rest. When she heard Yizichin's tone, it sounded like he was berating her, but it also sounded like he was helpless. Chi Mei shook her head and stuck out her tongue. Yizichin couldn't be bothered with her, so he turned to Jiao Qi. Let's go out and take a look. Wait, I'll go with you. Chi Mei giggled and followed him. Outside the general store, a long-haired youth sat in front of the store. His seat was made of human flesh, but what was even more unbelievable was that the person kneeling before him was a Sky Immortal expert. Although this was the Sky Great District, even Sky Immortals were absolute heroes. Now, he'd been forced to sit on a human stool. The onlookers couldn't help but sigh at the youth's status. At that moment, a middle-aged man appeared by the youth's side. Based on the fluctuations of spiritual energy around him, he was an immortal king expert. Moreover, his level wasn't low either. However, such a great expert was actually hunching his back and cautiously looking at the young man. The youth sensed the newcomers. He arched his brows indifferently, but ignored them. The Celestial King expert wasn't annoyed and spoke at the same time. Chapter 11:16. Chapter 11:16. The Gao family speak, said the youth impatiently. The immortal king glanced at him and replied, "This shop used to be Skyspan Trading Company's territory. This shop used to be the Skyspan Trading Company's territory, but half a year ago, someone called Grandmaster Yi suddenly appeared and bought it over. Now it's the general store we know." The youth cocked his head and sneered at the immortal king. "Grandmaster Yi? That's right. I heard this Grandmaster Yi is a 10th rank, or even 11th rank pill refiner. Every so often, he'll refine pills for immortal kings here. Although he charges a high price, his success rate is 100%. With that, the immortal king added, "Young master, pill refiners are like a hornet's nest. Young master, pill refiners are like a hornet's nest, especially high-ranked ones. They definitely have many powerful cultivators by their side, and quite a few are more than happy to help them out, so they'll owe them favors. Don't you think? What do you mean? They're just pill refiners. Do you think our Gao family is afraid of them? Even if he's a 12th rank pill refiner, I'll tear down his shop today." At that moment, the kneeling Sky Immortal's arm went limp. The youth sitting on him was caught off guard and fell to the ground. When the Heaven Immortal expert saw this, he quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed, begging for mercy. With the help of the others, the youth stood up, frowned and raised his leg to kick the youth. "Young master, this lowly one knows his wrongs. Please spare my life. Dog slave, you can't even be a chair. What use do I have for you?" A long sword suddenly appeared in the young man's hand. The blade of the sword was blue in color, and one could faintly feel a faint chill emanating from the sword. This sword was obviously not an ordinary weapon. When he saw the youth raise his sword, the Sky Immortal begged even more fervently. However, the youth didn't hesitate. He raised his sword, and a cold light flashed. Ding! Just as the blade was about to land on the Sky Immortal's neck, a pebble struck the blade and knocked it away. The tremendous force knocked the youth's sword from his hand, and it fell to the ground. "You're looking to die," the young man who was holding his right hand shouted. The momentary impact just now had already caused the web between his thumb and index finger to tremble. "Young master, you're really vicious. I don't care if you care about me, but this is my shop. You're making my shop bleed. You're making trouble for me. That's not very nice." Yi Zichen walked out of the shop in his white robes. When he did, the servants guarding the door all bowed to him. "Young master." Yi Zichen nodded towards everyone, then set his gaze on the young man. The young man looked to be in his 20s and was over 6 feet tall. His purple robe flickered with spiritual light, and it looked like there were many spirit formations engraved on it. Prominent cheekbones, aquiline nose, thick lip. Looking at his cracked right hand, there were no calluses on his hand. He didn't look like someone who used to hold a sword. His left hand was wrapped in a ball of white cloth, and his index and middle fingers were shorter than normal fingers. Faint traces of blood could be seen. It was obvious that his fingers had been cut not long ago. Not long after. Yi Zichen couldn't help but glance at Chi Mei. She couldn't have gotten her fingers chopped off, could she? He looked at the young man's attendants and saw that they were all Sky Immortal experts. They were far stronger than the silk pants he'd seen in the mortal and profound great districts. There were even several immortal kings among them. The immortal king accompanying the young man had already undergone tribulation and was on the verge of condensing his core into a supreme. This troublemaker. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh. Chi Mei was definitely an expert at stirring up trouble. Yi Zichen had already made up his mind. Once he dealt with this matter, he'd send her away. He took a few steps out of the shop and cupped his hands at the young man. "I don't know how I've offended you, young master, but you've sent people to surround my shop so tightly that not even a drop of water can trickle through. Harmony breeds wealth. If I've offended you in any way, please forgive me. I'll make sure to satisfy you." You're the owner of this shop?" snorted the youth. "Yes, that's me." Yi Zichen nodded amiably. "You look like a dog, aren't you?" The young man's words were merciless. When the Sky Yao in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda heard that, they wanted to rush forward. Meng Huairong in particular, if Jiao Qi hadn't held her back, would have smashed that bastard's head in. When they saw that Yi Zichen's people were about to move, the young man's attendants stepped forward as well. More and more onlookers gathered around them. Judging from the young man's attendants, they were obviously no ordinary family descendant. However, Grandmaster Yi was no ordinary person either. If the two of them clashed, it was hard to say who would win. All of you back down. Yi Zichen sneered at the Sky Yao in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Although the young man's words displeased him, he maintained his smile. I'll take that as a compliment. I still don't know your name, young master. Also, you still haven't told me why you're here. You've done a good job pretending to be a grandson, laughed the young man arrogantly. Let me tell you, I'm Gao Ruilong. I'm the direct descendant of Qilin City's Gao family. Seeing as you've done a good job pretending to be a grandson, I'm very pleased, so I won't make trouble for you. Is that woman behind you your woman? How about this? Hand her over to me, and I'll take my men and leave. Hiss. The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. There were only a few peak powers in the Sky Great District, and they were all extremely powerful. However, the ones they feared the most weren't, but rather, a few family names. Gao, Chui, Situ. From the outside, these three families looked like ordinary aristocratic families, but anyone who lived in the 72 districts would know that they were clans from the Divine Mountains. So long as they were related to the Divine Mountains, they were transcendent powers. In the 72 districts, they absolutely couldn't afford to provoke them. So it's the Gao family. My apologies, my apologies. After staying in Ice Blue City for so long, Yi Zichen had learned a bit about the Gao family. He knew that they came from the Divine Mountains. But to tell the truth, Yi Zichen didn't really care. It wasn't a big deal. However, he still had to give them face. Gao Ruilong was very satisfied with Yi Zichen's performance. He mused to himself, this kid's quite smart. Then he heard Yi Zichen say, but I don't know how my wife offended young Master Gao. Young Master Gao is missing 2 fingers. Could it be my wife did it? Yi Zichen smiled calmly, then frowned at Qi Mei. Yes or no? Yes, said Qi Mei pitifully. Sir, you have no idea, but this young master teased me on the way here. He even reached out to grab me. That place, in a fit of anger, Nonsense. When Yi Zichen heard that, he flew into a rage. Gao Ruilong continued to watch the drama unfold. He already knew that this woman would fall into his hands soon enough. So long as she fell into his hands, Just as he was lost in thought, Yi Zichen spoke again. Chapter 11:17. Enraged Gao Ruilong stood in the middle of the street. When he heard Yi Zichen's words, his face went from red to black. His smug expression gradually turned sinister as he stared fixedly ahead. You don't know how to appreciate favors. The onlookers sensed the tension in the air. Yi Zichen, who'd been in the middle of lecturing Qi Mei, turned around, narrowed his eyes, and smiled warmly. Are you talking about me? With that, Yi Zichen took a few steps forward. The Yao in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda followed him. In an instant, an invisible pressure bore down on Gao Ruilong's followers. Gao family's heir? Do you really think I don't know your Gao family? You're just a son of a side concubine. Do you really think you're some big shot? And you? Kai Renfei. Yi Zichen changed the subject, his sharp gaze landing on Kai Renfei, who was hiding among his subordinates. Stop hiding. Do you think I can't see you? When he heard this, Kai Renfei gnashed his teeth and walked out of the crowd. As soon as Yi Zichen appeared, his heart shrank involuntarily. He instinctively tried to avoid his gaze, but to his surprise, Yi Zichen recognized him. When he recalled the destruction of the Axe Gang, he'd had no choice but to flee to the Sky Great District's Gao family for protection. He hadn't expected to run into Yi Zichen again. Senior Yi. After some hesitation, Chiron Fei decided not to call Yi Zichen Senior Yi. Back in the mortal great district's 100 daybreaks in, Yi Zichen had seen through Chiron Fei's shrewdness. It was reasonable for him to address him in such a tone. However, just because Yi Zichen called him that didn't mean Yi Zichen would let him off the hook. If Yi Zichen let him off, he wouldn't be able to continue with his plans. I wouldn't dare call you Senior Yi. You're the Kai family's young master. Hey, why aren't you staying with the Kai family? Why are you a lackey of the Gao family? Could it be because of me? That's a sin. Hey, can I interview you? Your mother remarried into the Gao family after giving birth to you and became their third wife. Now you're living with them. How do you feel? Chiron Fei's expression instantly froze. He clenched his fists, his eyes bloodshot. As he stared at Yi Zichen, his entire body trembled. You're courting death. Gao Ruelong, who had long since been enraged, roared at this moment. What he found most unbearable in his life was when others talked about his background. Yi Zichen actually poured salt on his wounds without any hesitation, and his wife even broke 2 of his fingers. Kill him and tear down this shop for me. The surrounding attendants all raised their weapons and stepped forward. The sky demon of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda did not hesitate to meet the attendants. At this moment, Chiron Fei, who was burning with rage, suppressed the fire in his heart and shouted to his followers. Stop! He immediately ran up to Gao Ruelong and consoled him. Long Ji, this person is actually the recently famous Yi Zichen. His strength was at the level of a celestial king, and the Axe Gang had been annihilated at his hands. The Green Gang had also been intimidated by his pressure, not daring to make a sound. If worst comes to worst, we'd better endure it. We can't afford to provoke someone like this. Yi Zichen couldn't help but knit his brows. Chiron Fei really was shrewd. He'd already said all that, yet he was still enduring. Enduring was one thing, but if he ruined Yi Zichen's plans, that wouldn't be good. Just as Yi Zichen was pondering what he could say to provoke Gao Ruelong's rage, he didn't even need to think about it. Gao Ruelong slapped Chiron Fei across the face. Scram! Gao Ruelong kicked Chiron Fei in the stomach, then roared, If it weren't for you, I would have been born into a legitimate family. If your mother hadn't given birth to you, my position in the Gao family wouldn't be so awkward. If your mother hadn't given birth to you, my position in the Gao family wouldn't be so awkward. I allowed you to follow me out of respect for your mother, but you want me to endure it? Who do you think you are? You can only be born of a lowly bastard. You can't even let someone ride on your back. Hurry up and scram. Don't be an eyesore. Compared to Chiron Fei, Gao Ruelong was clearly a brainless aristocratic family disciple. Yi Zichen loved dealing with them the most. This kick prevented Yi Zichen from provoking Gao Ruelong any further, and it also cut off the last bit of interaction between Gao Ruelong and Chiron Fei. Chiron Fei wiped the blood from his mouth, got up and left without looking back. There was no need to associate with someone like that. Since he wanted to get into a fight with Yi Zichen, then he'd let him. He'd cry later. Also, that kick just now and that unbearable insult. Yi Zichen would make him pay for it sooner or later. Lowly bastard. Even though Chiron Fei had already left, Gao Ruelong was still cursing him sinisterly. Then he narrowed his eyes at Yi Zichen and snorted. You're Yi Zichen? What, are you scared? Yi Zichen arched his brows and smiled. If you're scared, then leave your left hand behind. Hurry up and scram with your men. Don't get in my way and interfere with my business. What a joke. Beat him up. With Gao Ruelong's roar, the Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings around him all charged at Yi Zichen's general store. Dozens of Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings attacked in unison. Even in the Sky Great District, this sort of scene wasn't common. The onlookers broke out in a cold sweat on Yi Zichen's behalf. Jiao Qi, teach them a lesson. Understood. Jiao Qi cupped his fists and nodded at Yi Zichen, then charged into the encirclement of Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings by himself. Meanwhile, Meng Huairong stood by Yi Zichen's side to protect him. When they saw that Jiao Qi had appeared on Yi Zichen's side, the Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings were stunned. However, they would not be lenient because of this. All of them unleashed their most lightning-fast attacks at Jiao Qi. Ridiculous! When he saw the Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings unleash their spiritual techniques, Jiao Qi simply laughed indifferently. His body twisted, and several copies of him appeared. Bang! 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 The afterimages faded away. By the time Jiao Qi's clones merged back into one, the Sky Immortals and Immortal Kings were all gravely injured and lying on the ground. No one had seen what had happened in between. "Master, we've dealt with them all." "How? Isn't there another one?" Jiao Qi arched his brows at Gao Ruelong, then instantly landed beside him and stomped him into the ground. "Which hand did he use to touch you?" Yi Zichen glanced at Qi Mei. She hadn't even reacted to what had just happened. She was still astonished. When she heard his question, she instinctively replied, "My left hand." "Did you hear that? 2 hands. Chop off both of his hands," said Yi Zichen. Chapter 11:18. His words were shocking. Qi Mei sensed faint, killing intent in his deep eyes. Yi Zichen seemed to be avenging her, but he'd purposefully pretended he'd misheard and wanted to cut off his arms. It seemed that helping her was just a cover-up. He had another goal in mind. When she saw his gaze, Qi Mei swallowed her words. At that moment, Yi Zichen turned around and looked coldly at Gao Ruelong, who was still under Jiao Qi's foot. "Do it! Don't you dare!" roared Gao Ruelong, still sprawled on the ground. "I'm a member of the Gao family. If you dare touch me, you'll be making an enemy out of the entire Gao family. Hurry up and do it." Even though Gao Ruelong had brought up the Gao family's name, Yi Zichen remained unmoved. He coldly ordered. Jiao Qi didn't hesitate. He transformed his hands into sharp swords and chopped off Gao Ruelong's arms. The instant the blood spurted out, a piece of white cloth was spread out on the ground. All of the blood landed on the white cloth, including the 2 hands, which were wrapped up by the white cloth. Gao Ruelong, who'd lost both his arms, screamed in agony. The onlookers couldn't bear to watch, but Yi Zichen lifted the white cloth and placed it in front of Gao Ruelong, then smiled warmly. Scram! Yi Zichen! Gao Ruelong's eyes were bloodshot from the heart-wrenching pain. Sweat poured down his forehead like rain. "Just you wait. Our Gao family and you can never coexist. No problem. I, Yi Zichen, will wait right here for your Gao family. But I suggest you, if you want to live, hurry up and scram." Gao Ruelong's attendants helped him up and left. As they left, they didn't forget to take his bandaged hands with them. Once everything was settled, Yi Zichen bowed to the onlookers. "I'm truly sorry you had to see this, but the Gao family is truly a bully. They actually wanted to tear down my shop, so I had no choice but to seek self-preservation. How about this? For the next half a month, I'll sell all my pills, artifacts, and talismans at a 30% discount. I'll also sell condensing pills for a limited time. Please help me convey this message." Condensing pill. A 30% discount on other pills wasn't a big deal. The shops in Ice Blue City often held such promotions. What drove the onlookers crazy was that the condensing pills were being sold for a limited time. As soon as the news was released, the surrounding Immortal Kings directly walked into the shop. The Celestial Immortals who had yet to reach the Immortal King level also went in to join in the fun. Quite a few of the onlookers even hurried over to their clans, asking them to send people over to purchase condensing pills. All in all, the farce with the Gao family had been completely forgotten by a single condensing pill. All they cared about was the condensing pill. Seeing these Immortal Kings and Sky Immortals swarming into the shop, the Sky Demons of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda also entered the shop to greet them. Jiao Qi also walked over at this moment and said, "Young master, condensing pills are sold for a limited time. Should we limit them? And what about the price?" "There's no limit. Just this half a month. We'll sell as much as they want, until they can't afford it anymore. Let's set the price at 500 million. Or they can use 4 sets of materials to exchange for it, or some great treasure. Yi Zichen replied. This. Jiao Qi looked somewhat hesitant. Young master, if we sell them off like that, won't it affect the situation here? If we sell so many sea-condensing pills, a large number of immortal kings will undergo their divine tribulations, and countless more will ascend to the divine mountains. The divine mountains won't just sit back and watch. It's fine. Yi Zichen smiled calmly and waved his hand. This was all part of his plan. He just moved things up a bit. However, this didn't affect his entire plan. We're piling up so many sea-condensing pills that it's almost moldy. There's no harm in selling some to them. Besides, we're sending talents to the divine mountains. The people in charge of the divine mountains can't wait to thank us enough. Are they going to make trouble for us? Having said that, Jiao Qi didn't say anything else. He cupped his hands respectfully and returned to the shop to sell his sea-condensing pills. Meanwhile, Yi Zichen gazed up at the divine mountains, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Little big brother, I seem to have heard something incredible just now. At that moment, Qi Mei suddenly spoke up. She walked up to Yi Zichen, put her arms around his head, and stared right into his eyes. You said your sea-condensing pills are about to go moldy, yet you still want to sell them for 500 million each? Is that a problem? Asked Yi Zichen in confusion. How could it not be a problem? Don't you know that 3 batches of ingredients cost 600 million? Also, if you charge 100 million for labor, that's 700 million. Now you're selling them at a discount, and you're not selling them in limited quantities? Hurry up and pay me back 200 million, or else I'm quitting, said Qi Mei. Fine, raise the price a bit. With that, Yi Zichen transmitted to Jiao Qi and raised the price to 1 billion. Before long, a commotion broke out in the shop. Clearly, the people who'd been preparing to buy pills couldn't accept the sudden increase in price. However, no one knew exactly what Jiao Qi said to them, but they all quietened down. I almost forgot to ask you. How is it that you can find me no matter where I go? Yi Zichen tilted his head and looked at Qi Mei. He'd been wondering about this for a long time. He'd once suspected that Qi Mei had left a mark on him, but even after scanning him with his immortal awareness several times, he couldn't find anything suspicious. You're so famous, so it's too easy to find you. As soon as I left the mausoleum, I heard that you'd destroyed the Axe Gang. After that, all I had to do was think about it to figure out why you were here. Qi Mei shrugged and pouted. Yi Zichen didn't pursue the matter any further. Instead, he looked up at the 9 divine mountains in the sky. How long have they been around? This sudden turn of events startled Qi Mei. She glanced at the 9 divine mountains and said, They've been around for billions of years. These 9 divine mountains seem to have existed for billions of years. They've existed since the beginning of the God race, but as for how they appeared, there's no way of knowing. Is that so? Yi Zichen nodded calmly, but his gaze remained fixed on the 9 divine mountains. An indescribable light flashed through his eyes. Qi Mei didn't quite understand why Yi Zichen would ask such a question, but before long, she heard. Do you think it's possible to destroy the divine mountains? What? Qi Mei's eyes instantly widened. She was astonished by Yi Zichen's question. I don't think so, but I don't think anyone's ever done something like that before. What? Do you want to destroy the divine mountains? Wow, young man, you're quite creative. Chapter 11:19. Chapter 11:19. Yi Zichen's goal. Yi Zichen's shocking words reverberated in her ears. Qi Mei looked over in a daze, then noticed Yi Zichen's expression. She had a bad feeling. Erect another divine mountain? This idea had been in place since the God Realm's founding. Ever since Empress Myrtlestar returned to the stars, the God Realm's map had been set in stone. It hadn't changed in the past billions of years. Yet now Yi Zichen was saying he wanted to destroy the divine mountains and erect another? She instinctively reached out to touch Yi Zichen's forehead. Yi Zichen frowned and dodged, only to hear Qi Mei speak up. Then, she said, "Sweetie, are you sick? You're the one who's sick." Yi Zichen rolled his eyes in exasperation, then said, "Are you telling me I'm wrong? If you can have 9 divine mountains hanging in the sky, why can't you have another? Besides, if a divine mountain exists, is it invincible? It can't be destroyed?" In response to Yi Zichen's barrage of questions, all Qi Mei could do was shake her head repeatedly. She took a few steps back and stared at his resolute gaze in astonishment. "Sweetie, your way of thinking is really dangerous." This was beyond Qi Mei's comprehension. She'd lived in the god realm for so long, but this was the first time she'd heard of destroying or erecting a divine mountain. Yi Zichen paid no heed to her exclamations. The way he saw it, his way of thinking was correct. Since it existed, there was always a chance it could reappear, but there was also a chance it could be destroyed. The other gods didn't think that way, nor did they do it. It could only be said that they weren't strong enough. But that didn't mean it was impossible. He'd thought that, as the 5 Elements' great emperor's son, she might be able to help him out. Now it seemed he'd been wasting his time. Yi Zichen couldn't be bothered to waste any more time with her. He headed straight for his room. Serves him right. By now, Gao Ruelong had already returned to the Gao family's lands. News of his loss of both arms had instantly spread throughout the clan. The Kai family's Kai Renfei sat in the courtyard, his expression cold and mocking. He'd already warned Gao Ruelong about the marriage proposal, but he'd ended up like this. He could only say that he deserved it. "Brother Fei, Gao Ruelong's already gone to see the family head. If you leave him early and come back, if he mentions this to the patriarch, then you..." The one who spoke was a direct descendant of the Kai clan. He could be considered Kai Renfei's brother. Just like Kai Renfei, he had been sent by the Kai clan to the Gao clan to seek refuge. In the past half a year, the Kai clan had been very careful when they came to the Gao clan. After all, this wasn't the Kai clan. It wasn't a place where they could do as they pleased. As soon as Kai Renfei abandoned Gao Ruelong and returned to the clan, Gao Ruelong's hands were chopped off. In the first place, the Gao family didn't particularly like them. If the Gao family head took this opportunity to attack the Kai family, it would be difficult for the Kai family to escape destruction. "What are you afraid of?" Kai Renfei smiled faintly when he heard his brother's worry. "The only reason Gao Ruelong ended up like this is because he's brainless. Recently, people from the Divine Mountains have come to visit the Gao family. The Gao family is incredibly busy right now. If Gao Ruelong went to his father for such a small matter, he would only be adding to his father's troubles. It's already good enough that he didn't get scolded by his father, but he still wants to put the blame on me?" Before he'd even finished speaking, the jade slip in his brother's hands lit up. After reading the contents of the jade slip, a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. "Brother Fei, you're amazing. I just received word that Gao Ruelong went looking for Gao Xiong, but he was directly kicked out. From the looks of it, he even injured Gao Xiong. Isn't that only natural?" Kai Renfei's expression was as cold as ever, as if everything was under his control. Compared to the people of the Divine Mountains, Gao Ruelong's matter is nothing more than a trifling matter. He can't even handle a small matter like this. Yet he still went looking for Gao Xiong? I'm afraid Gao Ruelong's position in Gao Xiong's heart can't get any lower. From now on, we can't associate with Gao Ruelong anymore. If we stick with him, Gao Xiong might direct his anger at us. Gao Ruelong's chances of becoming the next head of the Gao family are slim. Starting tomorrow, try to get in touch with Gao Yunting. Understood. The junior nodded. After sending the junior off, Kai Renfei's eyes flashed with cold light. Yi Zichen. After returning to his room, Yi Zichen sat on his bed. Despite himself, he couldn't help but think of a plan. In truth, Selling off sea condensing pills and attacking the Gao family juniors had been part of his plan. There was no need to explain how precious sea condensing pills were. Even the immortal kings of the lower divine mountains, including the 72 districts, fought over them like duck. Yi Zichen had suddenly announced that he was selling sea condensing pills, and he'd even set a limit on how many they could sell. Then, regardless of whether they had immortal kings or not, they'd all frantically gather their wealth to buy sea condensing pills. Clans with sea condensing pills would help their immortal kings break through. Although it seemed like a boost to their clan's strength, wasn't it also weakening their clans? When immortal kings broke through to supremacy, they had to ascend the divine mountains. After losing so many of their immortal kings, upheaval would become even more unstoppable. They'd sweep through the 72 districts, including the territories of the lower divine mountains. Although the lower divine mountains was a barren wasteland, if they gathered all of its resources, even rulers might covet them. After ascending to the divine mountains, Yi Zichen couldn't deny that he was looking for someone. But don't forget, he was also here for revenge. The 5 elements' great emperor's enemies were the god kings, but he'd hated the god realm's lightning tribulation clan for 100 years. He'd heard from Yin Shang that the god realm's Shao family wasn't to be trifled with. He naturally wouldn't go looking for trouble just because he was broke. He needed a backer and upheaval. That was the foundation of all his plans. Secondly, if he disregarded everything else and fought over sea condensing pills, he'd cause the lower divine mountains to run out of money, precious artifacts, and immortal herbs. All of those resources would be in Yi Zichen's hands. Compared to strength, money wasn't all that powerful. But once you had enough money, you could use it as a lever to move the world. With the support of absolute resources, upheaval would become Yi Zichen's sword, a tiger's leopard in his fight against the Shao family and the God Emperor. These were all part of his calculations, and everything was going according to his plan, one step at a time. As for the Gao family, which he'd provoked on a whim. Chapter 11:20. Fat meat time flew by. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Yi Zichen sat cross-legged in the great hall of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. He sat directly in front of one of the 5 paintings the 5 elements' great emperor had left him, the one containing the lightning element. White light flickered around him, and bolts of lightning rumbled through the hall. Suddenly, a faint red bolt of lightning shot out of the hall and slammed into Yi Zichen's head. The bolt of lightning instantly dissipated. Yi Zichen sat cross-legged on the ground and opened his eyes. His gaze was like lightning, and as soon as he opened his eyes, tangible lightning bore through them. His majestic aura burst forth involuntarily from his body, and countless bolts of lightning filled the hall. Return. That single word was like a commandment. As soon as it appeared, all the lightning surging through the hall gathered around Yi Zichen and returned to his body. After absorbing the lightning, Yi Zichen's aura grew much stronger than before. I've achieved minor success in the lightning element. Of the 5 elements, only rain hasn't reached minor success yet. I've converted 80% of my divine power. It seems that as long as I achieve minor success in the rain element, I'll be able to convert immortal power into divine power and ascend the divine mountains. Yi Zichen sensed his aura and couldn't help but clench his fist. He'd been in possession of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda for quite some time now. Even the 5 elements' great emperor cared deeply about this treasure. Now, he finally sensed how extraordinary it was. The pagoda was like a world of its own. Not only did it form its own dimension, it contained the laws of the heavens and the earth. More importantly, time flowed differently within the pagoda. Yi Zichen did a rough calculation and found that the first floor was roughly 10 times faster than the outside world. In other words, 1 day in the outside world was more than 10 days in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. To cultivators, this was like a bug. Furthermore, this was only the first floor. Yi Zichen had the feeling that time would flow even faster on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. Yi Zichen left the Yaoxiling pagoda and walked out of his room. He'd stayed in the pagoda for far too long. It was time to go out and relax. Cultivation required a balance between work and rest. Yi Zichen couldn't understand those who cultivated in seclusion. If they cultivated blindly, they'd probably go stupid. Those who were in death seclusion might have really died. However, the moment he walked out of the room and escaped from the restriction, he heard a clamor coming from downstairs. There are still people who dare to cause trouble here? Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows, then walked down the stairs and saw that the first floor of the shop was filled with people. Jiao Qi, Huairong, what is going on? Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong raised their brows at the group of people still arguing with the shopkeepers inside the Yaoxiling pagoda. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong walked over. Young master, didn't we agree to sell condensing pills a few days ago? You said you would sell them for half a month. Now that half a month has passed, we will remove them from the shelves. These people didn't manage to buy a condensing pill, so they're causing a ruckus here. Yi Zichen nodded, then arched his eyebrows. How's the sales recently? Hee, I know that. Meng Huairong giggled, then pulled a jade slip from her pocket. She'd kept track of all the recent sales. Sales of condensing pills are simply too good. I'm afraid we've earned trillions of spirit coins in the past half a month. The raw materials, natural treasures, precious artifacts, and talismans are also unimaginable. I've done some secret research, and not even the Skyspan Trading Company's total assets can compare to what we've earned in the past half a month. Right, the Skyspan Trading Company bought tens of thousands of condensing pills from us. She handed the jade slip to Yi Zichen. Although he'd mentally prepared himself, when he saw the information, he couldn't help but gasp. He was now a mountain of gold. Yi Zichen was sure that any family clan would covet his wealth. We have to be careful in the near future. We're a juicy piece of meat right now. I'm afraid countless family clans want a bite out of us. Some families have already made their move, said Jiao Qi. When Jiao Qi heard this, he said, just last night, a few peak-stage Immortal King experts tried to attack our shop. However, they were all killed by our people. As expected, Yi Zichen sighed inwardly. Of course, there were pros and cons to amassing wealth like this. Even the Skyspan Trading Company had people who dared rob them of their auction items, let alone the fact that he didn't even have as much power as the Skyspan Trading Company. It made sense that someone would try to rob them. Those Immortal Kings last night were probably just a signal. In the near future, even more family clans, or even people from the Divine Mountains, might send people to rob them. For the next few days, have the blacksmiths refine as many treasures as possible. Arm all of us. I'm not talking about an immortal sword or a set of battle armor. I want you all to be armed from your feet to your teeth. Also, get in touch with the Skyspan Trading Company and see if they have any demigod artifacts or divine artifacts for sale. Buy whatever you can. Master Yu. Do you think that 9th stage Earth Supremes are invincible here? Let me tell you, those Immortal Kings were just a signal. Our wealth is something that even a Celestial would covet. Perhaps in the future you will encounter even more powerful opponent. Earth Supremes, maybe even Sky Supremes. Do you understand? When Jiao Qi heard this, he realized the gravity of the situation. Yao didn't have a deep understanding of money, but when he heard Yi Zichen say this, he didn't dare act carelessly. I'll make the arrangements right away. With that, Jiao Qi left the shop. At the same time, Meng Huairong frowned. Master, what should we do with these people? Meng Huairong was naturally referring to the customers who'd failed to buy the pills and were making a scene. In the past, Yi Zichen would definitely have driven them away, but when he considered the possibility that the Divine Mountains might send people down, he had other ideas. But tell them that because they missed the time limit, we'll have to raise the price a bit. 1,200 million each, or exchange for treasures of equal value. This time, we won't limit the time limit but the quantity. How many sea condensing pills do we have left? About 4 or 500,000, said Meng Huirong. She wasn't in charge of these things, so she couldn't give an accurate number. Then sell them for another 300,000. Tell them. After that, we won't be selling any more. If they want to buy, they'd better hurry. Understood. When Meng Huirong heard this, she stepped forward. Yi Zichen smiled wickedly. Chapter 11:21. Chapter 11:21. Don't disappoint. Meth limited sale of sea condensing pills delighted those who hadn't been able to purchase any. However, when they heard that the price of the pills had increased, quite a few people complained. Still, they endured the pain and bought as many pills as they could to store in their clans. News of Ice Blue City's limited sale of 300,000 sea condensing pills quickly spread throughout the lower reaches of Nine Divine Mountain. While the clan was gathering funds to purchase the pills, they were also wondering just who the owner of this general store was. How could he sell so many sea condensing pills in such a large quantity? Just a fortnight ago, he'd probably sold hundreds of thousands of pills. Now he was selling another 300,000. What kind of wealth was that? Quite a few clans were envious of this mountain of gold. A few clans with connections to the Divine Mountains had already begun to make preparations. If they could steal the store's resources, they'd reap an unimaginable profit. Gradually, Ice Blue City's miscellaneous goods store gained some fame on the Divine Mountains. Of course, the ones who knew the most were the clans on the northern Divine Mountain. In a courtyard nestled between a mountain and a lake, a woman in a red dress stood near a lotus pond. The woman's expression was tranquil. She seemed to be gazing at the surface of the lake, but her eyes weren't focused. She seemed to be in a daze. First Mississippi, as she stared off into space, a middle-aged woman appeared at her side. This woman was no longer young. Her face was marred by the passage of time, but her charm wasn't inferior to anyone else's. In her youth, she would have been a rare beauty. The woman standing by the lotus pond turned around. When she saw the middle-aged woman, she smiled. "Auntie Lu, is there any news about him?" The woman called Auntie Lu frowned, her delicate brows tinged with worry. "First, miss, you hold an esteemed position in our clan. When it comes to choosing a spouse, you'll definitely choose a descendant of a great clan. If the master finds out that you're paying so much attention to a lowly brat, not only will he fly into a rage, but that brat won't have a good time either." These words already contained a faint warning tone. The expression of the woman in front of the lotus pond stiffened a little, but she revealed a disapproving smile and said, "What's there to be afraid of? If Auntie Lu doesn't say anything, no one will know. Aunt Lu, just say it. Is there any news about him?" In the face of the woman's coquettish behavior, Aunt Lu shook her head in amusement and exasperation. She also revealed a helpless expression. "Yes." "Then tell us quickly, how has he been for the past 6 months?" The woman in the red dress was a little anxious. "That kid's doing pretty well down there. His upheaval gang has already become one of the strongest factions in the 72 districts, and they're even expanding to the other Divine Mountains. Yes, after that, he seems to have encountered some trouble, but he asked for it." Aunt Lu's expression turned cold. Recently, she'd been investigating Yi Zichen's situation in the lower lands. She was well aware of his every move. Due to the young lady's request, she'd been observing Yi Zichen for several months now. However, following her series of actions, she increasingly felt that this young man was too irrational. When the woman in the red dress heard that there was trouble, she immediately revealed an anxious expression and spoke with even more urgency. "What happened to him?" "That young man bought a building from our Skyspan Trading Company. I only sold it to him out of respect for the young lady. At first, everything was fine. He used the store to gather information. However, just a few days ago, he suddenly provoked the Gao family. The Gao family is a member of the Lightning Emperor's family. Furthermore, they've been selling sea condensing pills in large quantities. I'm afraid they're selling them in the millions." "A million? When she heard that number, the woman in the red dress couldn't help but gasp. Not even her family could produce that many sea condensing pills. Where had Yi Zichen gotten them? Especially since they were in the lower lands, sea condensing pills were the most valuable medicine there was. How much profit could be made from selling them in the millions? Not even the Skyspan Trading Company could compare to the wealth a million sea condensing pills could generate. Aunt Lu's expression was solemn. When she saw Yi Zichen pull out 1,000,000 sea condensing pills, she couldn't help but be moved. That young man has 1,000,000 sea condensing pills is indeed shocking, but there's a problem. When he first took out so many sea condensing pills, I suspected that he was a representative of some great family. The woman in red nodded. That wasn't unreasonable at all. Generally speaking, large families of the Divine Mountains would set up a branch in the lower lands and choose a representative to promote their clan or gather resources. For example, she'd managed the Skyspan Trading Company in the lower lands, so she could be considered her family's representative. But I've been watching him for a long time now, and I've never seen him interact with anyone who might be from the Divine Mountains. All the resources he earns from selling pills are kept by him, his servants, and his housekeeper. That's why I said he's looking for trouble. 1,000,000 sea condensing pills is worth so much that even the Divine Mountains clans would covet it. He doesn't have enough strength to protect all that wealth, so it'll just benefit others. I heard that the Lightning Emperor's people have already made a move. But this young man's pretty smart. Perhaps he's realized this, and he's been contacting the Skyspan Trading Company to buy weapons, armor, and talismans. Sell them to him. When the woman in red heard that, she didn't hesitate at all. Sell all our half-divine artifacts and armor to him. No, have them exchange them for sea condensing pills. Miss, immortal artifacts were one thing, but they were actually half-divine artifacts. Although their clan did have some half-divine artifacts lying around, weapons and armor of that level were meant for the clan's elite squads. They couldn't even sell them, yet the miss was telling them to exchange for them? Although sea condensing pills were precious, they were only useful to immortal kings. Moreover, they were rare in the lower lands. For large clans like theirs, they didn't have mountains of sea condensing pills, but they had no problem supplying their clansmen. But half-divine artifacts were different. Even Sky Supremes fought over them like duck. The two weren't even on the same level, yet the miss was telling them to exchange half-divine artifacts for sea condensing pills. Just listen to me. If there's a problem, tell him I told him to. The woman in red frowned. When Auntie Lu saw the woman's resolute expression, she couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. Understood. I'll arrange it right away. Even after Auntie Lu left the courtyard, the woman in red's expression remained grave. All she could do was stare forlornly at the courtyard that had trapped her, at the lotus pond. Chapter 11:22. The hardest way to endure a beauty's kindness. 300,000 sea condensing pills was already enough for Yi Zichen to accumulate a fair bit of wealth. How long would it last? The answer was 3 days. In just 3 days, he'd sold all 300,000 sea condensing pills. Yi Zichen had to admit, he'd underestimated the wealth and resources of the lower lands. The way he saw it, the pills would last him at least half a month. He hadn't expected them to last less than 3 days. However, even after the pills were sold out, the various clans in Ice Blue City no longer came to cause a ruckus. They really didn't have anything left to buy more sea condensing pills. The massive sale of sea condensing pills had transformed the clans of the lower lands qualitatively. Countless immortal kings and wandering cultivators had all succeeded in condensing their seas. Once their divine power was converted to divine power, they could ascend to the Divine Mountains and witness the scene they'd longed for countless years. It was easy to imagine just how glorious the Ascension era would be in the next 10 years. All of this was because of Yi Zichen. After selling out of sea condensing pills, the store closed for the first time since its founding. All the Yao returned to the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, leaving only Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong outside to protect Yi Zichen and report on their sales. Master, this is all the money we earned from selling sea-condensing pills. Jiao Qi stood in the middle of the room. With a wave of his hand, countless spatial rings appeared. They took up 3/4 of the room, and all of them glowed with light. It was an astonishing sight. I've stored talismans, treasures, and other materials that other clans use to exchange for sea-condensing pills. When he saw so many spatial rings, Yi Zichen couldn't help but gasp. After a brief moment of shock, he nodded and gestured for Jiao Qi to put the rings away. However, as soon as Jiao Qi put them away, Meng Huairong took out another pile. I've stored the other clan's spirit coins, as well as the low-grade pills they use to exchange for sea-condensing pills. I've done some research recently, and more than 80% of the lower land's resources are already here. 80%. This wasn't just 80% of the 72 districts' resources, but 80% of the lower land's resources. Even though the resources beneath the Divine Mountains were sparse, 80% of all the resources beneath the Divine Mountains was an unimaginable amount of wealth. For some reason, Yi Zichen felt like he was the richest man in the world. Send 20% of the talismans and treasures to Upheaval's Wei Jie. The same goes for the pills and spirit coins. Send 20% to Wei Jie. Give all the materials to the artificers, alchemists, and talisman masters in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. It'd be best if they can advance, but if they can't, then continue to make low-level consumables. Huairong, you take care of that. Yes. Meng Huairong nodded. When will Lei Zhen and the others arrive? Yi Zichen frowned. A few days ago, he'd sent Lei Zhen and the other heavenly Yao of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda over, but 3 days had already passed, and there was still no sign of them. He should be here soon. When I sent him a transmission, he said he was at the foot of the Divine Mountain. Upheaval probably needs him there to expand. However, after I sent him a message, he immediately rushed back. If nothing unexpected happens, he should arrive here tomorrow morning, Jiao Qi replied. You've already pushed to the central Divine Mountain? Not bad. Yi Zichen hadn't wasted so many resources establishing Upheaval. Wei Jie hadn't disappointed him. The gang was expanding at the speed he'd expected. Right now, Yi Zichen wasn't in a hurry to ascend the Divine Mountains. He needed to do it in the most stable way possible. He needed to have Upheaval take over the lower lands first. Establishing a peak-level faction was no different from building a building, especially for someone like Yi Zichen, who'd started out as a commoner. If he didn't build a solid foundation and rush to the Divine Mountains, all his efforts would go to waste. How are the weapons, armor, and talismans I asked you to buy? How are things going? Asked Yi Zichen. That's strange. Jiao Qi was visibly confused. At first, we went to the Skyspan Trading Company to ask for immortal-grade weapons and armor, but they refused with all sorts of excuses. But just yesterday, they came looking for us and offered to trade demigod artifacts for sea-condensing pills? When he heard that, Yi Zichen arched his brows. When comparing sea-condensing pills to demigod artifacts, Yi Zichen didn't think they could compare at all. Demigod artifacts could be used even by Sky Supremes. Even diviners could use them. Sea-condensing pills could only be used to break through to the Immortal King level. Secondly, even a 10th-grade pill refiner could refine sea-condensing pills, but a demigod artifact required a 13th-grade artifact refiner, and more than one at that. No matter how you looked at it, exchanging demigod artifacts for sea-condensing pills was an idiotic choice. That's not all, said Meng Huairong. She'd been the one to carry out the transaction, so she naturally had a better understanding of the situation. A full set of demigod artifacts. It's a full set. They only asked for 10 sea-condensing pills. In total, they traded 3,000 sets of demigod artifacts to us, and then gave us special support talismans. When Jiao Qi heard that, he chimed in, That's right, that's just too strange. No matter how you look at it, this is a losing trade, But the Skyspan Trading Company agreed to it? Master, do you think they… No way. Jiao Qi and the others' intentions were clear. The Skyspan Trading Company was a trading company. The Merciful didn't command troops, and they didn't want to make money. Since they were doing business, they wouldn't make a loss. However, this transaction was clearly a huge loss, yet they still went through with it. Meng Huairong and the others suspected that the Skyspan Trading Company wanted to deal with them and rob them of their treasures. They couldn't see what was going on, but Yi Zichen could. Xue Honghong was probably behind all of this. Yi Zichen hadn't expected to owe her a favor, but this put even more pressure on him. Xue Honghong had transferred 3,000 sets of demigod artifacts from her clan for his sake. If he didn't marry her by the time the 10-year agreement was up, how embarrassing would that be? How could a family capable of refining 3,000 sets of demigod artifacts be an ordinary one? A beauty's kindness was the hardest to bear, but Yi Zichen had no way to repay her. All he could do was devote himself to her. Yi Zichen chuckled and shook his head. There's no need to doubt the Skyspan Trading Company's intentions. They absolutely won't do anything to us. For the time being, pay close attention to the Divine Mountain's movements, as well as the movements of any family connected to them. If they want to attack us, we have to be prepared. Before he finished speaking, the door to the room was kicked open with a bang. Qi Mei's small eyes narrowed into a line as she slyly spoke like a little fox. What's wrong with you? Chapter 11:23. Qi Mei's big deal. Qi Mei's sudden appearance startled everyone in the room. What they were discussing right now could be said to be confidential information, so they had set up restrictions around the room. However, even under such circumstances, Qi Mei still appeared in their room without anyone noticing. They couldn't help but wonder how she'd managed to get here. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Last time, Qi Mei had snuck up to the 6th floor right under Jiao Qi's nose. Meng Huairong and Yi Zichen hadn't noticed her either. It wasn't until she'd kicked the door open that they noticed. Yi Zichen sat in his chair and frowned. Qi Mei was becoming more and more unfathomable. Jiao Qi had been in a defensive stance, but when he saw that it was Qi Mei, he relaxed. He glanced at her a few times, but said nothing. He really didn't know how to address her. It seems I came at a bad time? After entering the room, Qi Mei sensed the atmosphere and stuck out her tongue. Although she said that, she didn't try to avoid suspicion. She sat across from Yi Zichen, picked up a fruit and took a bite out of it. Before entering the room, Qi Mei had said that they'd been surrounded, but Jiao Qi had his Yao awareness spread out and hadn't sensed anything out of the ordinary. He wasn't sure if she was telling the truth, so he cupped his fists at Yi Zichen. Master, I'll go take a look. Yi Zichen nodded at Jiao Qi, then turned to Meng Huairong. Huairong, you go take a look as well. Understood. The two 9th stage Earth Supremes left the room. Yi Zichen's gaze landed on Qi Mei and he said disdainfully, You really think of this place as your own? Do you really think of this place as your own home? Yi Zichen sighed helplessly at Qi Mei, then poured himself a cup of immortal brew. Didn't you leave a few days ago? Why'd you come back? What? A beauty like me coming to look for you is the result of 8 lifetimes of good fortune. Look at you and you're still so upset? Qi Mei bit into her fruit and pouted. You've caused such a ruckus lately, selling sea-condensing pills like you're dying. Don't you know how many families have their eyes on you? I'm worried about your safety, so I came back to protect you. Are you sure? Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows in disbelief as he sipped the wine. I think you're the same as those other families. You've also targeted me. Qi Mei's face instantly reddened. In truth, part of the reason she'd come here was because she'd been eyeing Yi Zichen's wealth. 80% of the lower land's resources were in Yi Zichen's hands. Who wouldn't be tempted? However, she was different from those clans. Those clans wanted to keep the wealth for themselves, but she wasn't one of them. She could lower herself to be Yi Zichen's wife. Licking her lips, Qi Mei squinted her eyes and smiled like a little fox, not saying anything. Yi Zichen knew that he had guessed correctly when he saw her shyness. Don't stare at me. Hurry up and go back to your brother to split the family property. Right now, he's definitely richer than me. Besides, you also know that I have a gang to maintain. I've already prepared to give all the resources I get from selling condensing pills to the gang. Who's eyeing your little toy? When Yi Zichen mercilessly exposed her, Chi Mei glared at him in embarrassment and anger. She really didn't understand. In terms of looks, she was a beauty that could topple cities and kingdoms. Countless men stared at her, but why didn't Yi Zichen even look her in the eye? Chi Mei felt that her charm had been greatly insulted. Chi Mei took a bite of the immortal fruit and said angrily, I'm here for something serious. Yi Zichen immediately put on a look of disbelief. How could she be looking for me for something serious? Tell me about it. Yi Zichen gestured for her to continue. Seeing his expression, Chi Mei felt like cursing him to pieces in her heart, but she still gritted her teeth and spoke. Recently, people from the Divine Mountains have come down. You should know, right? People from the Divine Mountains had definitely come. Recently, the lower lands were in an uproar over the sale of condensing pills. There were quite a few spies from the lower lands. When faced with such a juicy piece of meat, it wasn't surprising that the Divine Mountains had sent people down. His spies had noticed quite a few people acting strangely. If he was right, they were most likely here for him. Chi Mei nodded noncommittally, then continued, Some of them are here for you. Some of these people are here for you. I'm sure you're well aware of that. Any clan would be envious of the resources they obtained from selling condensing pills. But that's not why I'm here. Although you're a bit greedy, you're no fool. I trust that since you dared to do this, you naturally have a backup plan. There's no way you're just sitting there waiting to be slaughtered. Yi Zichen never would have guessed that Chi Mei would give him such a high evaluation. He straightened up in surprise, then cupped his fist. I'm truly moved beyond words to receive your praise, Miss Chi Mei. Don't be so glib-tongued with me. It's irritating. Chi Mei waved Yi Zichen away in exasperation. Suddenly, a mysterious expression appeared on her face. She glanced around, lowered her voice, and said, I came looking for you because I have a big deal to discuss with you. A big deal? Asked Yi Zichen suspiciously. Hey, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Gao family is actually the Shao family's overseer of lightning. Every 50 years, the Shao family comes to the Gao family for resources. Just a few days ago, they sent people down again. Chi Mei squinted her eyes and laughed. Humph, it seems you intentionally lured that Gao family silk pants to my place. Yi Zichen laughed calmly. Don't say that, said Chi Mei angrily. Chi Mei pouted angrily and said, I was indeed molested by that brat, but that's not important. What's important is that the Gao family's money-grubbing methods are formidable. Although you've recently become rich by dumping condensing pills, you're still lacking compared to the Gao family's years of painstaking effort. What do you mean? In truth, Yi Zichen had already guessed most of it, but he still wasn't sure, so he asked deliberately. I know where they're doing business, and I know the route the Gao family took to get there. Chi Mei's eyes were filled with faint excitement. She licked her lips with her pink tongue as she spoke. Chapter 11:24. We all know. The Shao family had a grudge against Yi Zichen. If they could steal his treasures, that would be great. However, Yi Zichen wasn't the only one with a grudge against the Shao family. If it were that easy to steal their treasures, how could they have waited for Yi Zichen to act? Furthermore, Chi Mei felt far too mysterious. Yi Zichen couldn't trust her completely. Hey, tell me if you're going or not. When Yi Zichen didn't respond, Chi Mei called out anxiously. At that moment, Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong returned to the room. Coincidentally, they returned. Yi Zichen changed the subject. What's the situation outside? Ms. Chi Mei is right. There is indeed a group of about 20 people outside our shop. Those people were all immortal kings, and there were even a few Earth Supreme experts. Huairong and I have already dealt with them, Jiao Qi said, cupping his hands. There's really someone? Weren't you always on guard? How come you didn't know that someone had snuck up to our shop? When he heard this, Yi Zichen was rather annoyed. Recently, he'd reminded Jiao Qi and the others many times to keep an eye on their surroundings. They couldn't let the people of the Divine Mountains catch them off guard. But now that they were outside the store, they didn't notice anything. If Qi Mei hadn't suddenly appeared to inform them, what would have happened if they had suddenly attacked? Although immortal kings and earth sovereigns weren't strong enough to do anything to them, what if the next team that appeared was strong enough to threaten them? Young master, please calm down. This subordinate has indeed been on guard, and so has Huai Rong. However, this subordinate really doesn't know how they got here. Jiao Qi lowered his head. As a heavenly Yao of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he obeyed his master's orders without question. Ever since Yi Zichen told them to keep watch over Ice Blue City, he didn't dare let his guard down in the slightest. Day and night, he sent out his Yao awareness to survey the city. Any rustle of grass in the wind would not be able to escape his demon sense, but he really didn't notice the appearance of this group of people. Jiao Qi is right. We don't know why this happened either, Meng Huairong said. What's so strange about that? At that moment, Qi Mei pursed her lips and laughed. One look and I can tell that you've never been to the sacred mountain. There are many aura-concealing Dharma treasures on the sacred mountain now. Those people have magic treasures that can conceal their auras. In a situation where there is no particularly great disparity in strength, you naturally have no way to detect them. However, this treasure is extremely valuable. It seems like the people of the Divine Mountain are willing to pay a heavy price to deal with you. Is there such a thing? Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. Any aura-concealing treasure could hide them from Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong's senses? If everyone on the Divine Mountain had one, then he would be in an absolute passive position. Isn't it obvious? Haven't you ever wondered why I would always appear in front of you out of the blue, but you didn't know I was coming? Qi Mei pursed her lips into a smile, then shrugged at them. Actually, these aura-concealing treasures are very easy to break. The sacred mountain also has treasures specifically designed to deal with these types of treasures. Do you have it? Sell it to me, said Yi Zichen directly. How could I have it? Qi Mei curled her lips in exasperation. I'm not the type to invite disaster or cause trouble. Why would I need a treasure like that? Well, I don't have it, but the Shao family's emissary should have it, right? Qi Mei flashed her little fox smile once more. She smiled craftily and stared directly at Yi Zichen. You're doing this on purpose. Yi Zichen could tell that she was forcing him onto her pirate ship. Right now, he had no way of breaking an aura-concealing treasure. If he didn't want to worry about anything, he'd have to steal the Shao family's emissary. Don't say that. I'm just giving you a heads up. Do you want to go or not? It's up to you. Qi Mei squinted her eyes and smiled. He had to break the aura-concealing treasure. Otherwise, he'd be in an absolute passive position. After hesitating for a while, Yi Zichen decided that even though he knew this was a trap, he had no choice but to jump into it. How strong is the Shao family's emissary? Not too strong, not too strong. He's just a 9th stage Earth Supreme. A 9th stage Earth Supreme? In the lower lands, that was a godlike existence. Never mind a 9th stage Earth Supreme, even a 1st stage Earth Supreme could beat up all the immortal kings of the lower lands. Yet from Qi Mei's mouth, it was as if a 9th stage Earth Supreme wasn't even worth mentioning. Or perhaps she knew that Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were 9th stage Earth Supremes as well. Yi Zichen wasn't quite sure, so he deliberately put on a gloomy expression. You really dare say that? If a 9th stage Earth Supreme isn't strong, then what do you think is? To everyone else in the lower lands, a 9th stage Earth Supreme is an unreachable existence. But to you, do you not know whether it's strong or not? Qi Mei pressed her lips into a smile. When he heard that, Yi Zichen's heart trembled. He frowned and said, What do you mean? Do you really need me to say it out loud? They're both 9th stage Earth Supremes, aren't they? And your shop assistants are all Earth Supremes, aren't they? You have so many Earth Supremes under your command. Do you really think a measly 9th stage Earth Supreme is anything to you? When they heard that, Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were visibly moved. Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. How did you know that? Qi Mei was definitely only an immortal king. It wasn't just Yi Zichen. Even Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong could sense it. Given her strength, there was no way she could tell how strong Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were, yet not only did she say that Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were 9th stage Earth Supremes, but she also said the shop assistants were all Earth Supremes. Don't tell me you don't know why I know? Qi Mei's words clearly held a deeper meaning, especially when he looked into her eyes. Yi Zichen didn't dare look her in the eye. She knew he had the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Yi Zichen instinctively gulped. She definitely knew about the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, and she definitely knew it was in his hands. Otherwise, there was no way she'd say something like that. Some things are meaningless once you say them out loud. But treasures belong to the fated. Don't you think so, sweetie? Boom. As soon as she said that, Yi Zichen felt like his head was about to explode. She really did know. When he saw Qi Mei's smiling expression, Yi Zichen's heart sank. She knew everything. She knew everything. All right, don't overthink things. Right now, let's talk about our big deal. How about it? Sweetie, are you going or not? I'm going, Yi Zichen said without any hesitation. Chapter 11:25. The overly mysterious Qi Mei. The autumn wind rustled. In the lower lands, the 4 seasons weren't all that different in temperature, but Qi Mei told Yi Zichen that it was actually autumn. She'd asked Yi Zichen to disrupt the Shao family and Gao family's deal. He'd just agreed to go, then a second later, Qi Mei told him. The deal was tonight. There was no time for negotiation. She'd obviously already decided that he'd go with her. This woman. She's not as simple as I thought. Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself as he followed Qi Mei down the ancient path. From the first time they'd met until now, Qi Mei had always felt mysterious and unfathomable. Since the 4 of them were going to disrupt the deal, Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong naturally had to tag along. Against the Shao family's emissary, these 2 9th stage Earth Supremes were their only bargaining chip. Are you sure it's okay to dress like this? Yi Zichen and the others didn't disguise themselves in the slightest. They wore their usual clothes, and didn't even bother covering their faces. It's fine. The Shao family is also worried that the emissary's frequent dealings with the Gao family will cause them to get on good terms with each other. In order to prevent that from happening, the Shao family sends a different representative each time. Furthermore, this time, the Gao family sent his son, not the head of the family. We've never met each other before, so there's no problem with us going like this. If we deliberately cover up, it'll only make them suspicious. Qi Mei, who was walking at the front, chuckled. Yi Zichen wondered how she knew so much, so he spoke up. Yi Zichen said, "If that's the case, they must have some sort of secret code. We don't know about that." Qi Mei stopped abruptly when she heard that. Yi Zichen, Jiao Qi, and the others stopped as well. Qi Mei smiled calmly. Qi Mei smiled calmly and said, "I asked you to come here, so don't always look ahead. If I dared to come find you, I naturally know everything." As soon as he said that, a flash of light appeared in his palm. He slapped his palm against a towering ancient tree. Not long after, the ancient tree also flashed with a ray of light. At this moment, Qi Mei also uttered a few sentences that were difficult to understand. "Open!" With a shrill cry, a door suddenly appeared in the middle of the towering tree. Qi Mei turned to Yi Zichen and the others. "Let's go." Qi Mei took the lead and walked in. Jiao Qi, who was standing outside, frowned as he looked at the ancient tree. "Young master, doesn't she know too much?" Even Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were a little suspicious of Qi Mei's actions. She had appeared right in front of them, right outside the store, and was preparing to ambush them. She had also appeared right at the time when the two parties were about to make a deal. All of this gave Jiao Qi and the others a very strange feeling. She even knew the time and location of the trade between the Shao and Gao families. She even knew about this secret space. After all, Jiao Qi, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's Skyfiends, and Upheaval's extensive intelligence network hadn't been able to find out about this. Young Master, on the way here, Jiao Qi and I thought that the people who suddenly appeared at the sundry goods store and prepared to ambush us were actually people brought by this woman. Meng Huairong frowned. She and Jiao Qi hadn't stopped talking on the way here. When they put all this together, the only possibility they could think of was that Qi Mei had planned all of this. If she hadn't done it on purpose, then it was all too much of a coincidence. If they could think of this, how could Yi Zichen not? He'd suspected this as soon as they'd set out, but whether or not it was a trap, he was prepared to face it. It was better to believe it than not. What if all of this really was a coincidence? Yi Zichen had used his wealth, which even the Divine Mountains were envious of, as bait to lure the people of the Divine Mountains into sending reinforcements. He couldn't let a single aura-concealing treasure throw him into a passive position. Let's go in and take a look. Yi Zichen didn't say anything else. He focused his gaze and stepped into the ancient tree. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's Skyfiends. Their responsibility was to protect their master. Now that their master had entered, they naturally had to follow. When everyone stepped into the ancient tree, the towering ancient tree lost its light and returned to its original appearance. "You're too slow." As soon as they entered, Yi Zichen and the others heard Qi Mei's pout. At the same time, Yi Zichen and the others saw the mysterious space clearly. The world behind the door was simple. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast, endless plain. In the center of the plain was a thatched hut. It was the only structure they could see. The Shao family is in that hut. In a bit, prepare a fire attribute spatial ring. That's what they agreed on before we made our deal. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong, come with me. We'll catch them off guard. Qi Mei was already planning out the rest of the plan, but when he heard she wanted to take Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong away, Yi Zichen couldn't help but frown. He dared to follow them here because he was relying on those two. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong's expressions darkened. Their mission was to ensure Yi Zichen's safety. Before entering, they'd already suspected Qi Mei, but now she wanted them to leave Yi Zichen. What are you doing? Hurry up. If the Gao family shows up, we'll all be exposed. When she saw that Yi Zichen and the others hadn't moved, Qi Mei's eyes flashed with urgency. When she noticed their expressions, she couldn't help but speak up. You're not suspecting me, are you? Sweetie, I absolutely wouldn't harm you. Qi Mei's expression was filled with grievance. If she could, she really wanted to scream her innocence. Yi Zichen looked her straight in the eye. This woman. He really couldn't see through her. Don't be fooled by her usual sweet and innocent demeanor, but she was more scheming than anyone he'd ever met. Furthermore, she had an endless array of tricks up her sleeve. Yi Zichen had no choice but to be on guard against her. What? You're not really suspecting me, are you? But if you suspected me, why did you follow me in? Can I trust you? Yi Zichen stared intently at Qi Mei, who'd cried out in grievance, and asked. Chapter 11:26. His Majesty Master. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong knit their brows. In this unfamiliar environment, they had to stay by Yi Zichen's side to protect him. If Yi Zichen told them to leave with Qi Mei, he'd be putting himself in unknown danger. Go with her. Yi Zichen shouted. Qi Mei had brought them here. Even if Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong stayed by his side, if Qi Mei wanted to harm him, even they wouldn't be able to stop her. Besides, even if Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong left, he still had the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. If they really were in danger, he could just summon the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's heavenly Yao or hide inside. It wasn't as dangerous as they'd imagined. Yi Zichen patted his spatial ring. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong seemed to recall the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's existence. They nodded, but still tried to comfort him. Master, be careful. That's more like it. Chi Mei also smiled at this time and said with a cute smile, You guys just have to believe me. I definitely won't harm Big Brother. Alright, let's hurry up and go. Sweetie, you should hurry to the thatched hut as well. If the Gao family shows up soon, we'll be in trouble. Alright. Chi Mei led Jiao Qi and the others away. Yi Zichen took out his fire attribute spatial ring. Recently, he'd been selling sea condensing pills. When other family clans came to trade with him, they brought spatial rings with them. Obtaining a fire attribute spatial ring wasn't difficult at all. What was difficult was how to face the Shao family's emissary. Before leaving, Chi Mei hadn't told him anything about a trade, nor had she told him how to do it. He'd have to improvise. He took a few deep breaths, clenched his fists, and headed for the thatched hut. Miss Chi Mei, where are you taking us? After parting ways with Yi Zichen, Chi Mei led Jiao Qi and the others north. As they got further and further away from Yi Zichen, Jiao Qi couldn't help but ask. Chi Mei furrowed her brows. By now, she was no longer as cute as she'd been with Yi Zichen. Her entire face was icy cold. Don't ask so much nonsense. Just follow me. Suddenly, a dark light flashed through Chi Mei's eyes. When they saw this light, Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong fell to their knees with a thud. Your Honor. Humph. Chi Mei snorted indifferently at the two prostrating on the ground. She no longer rushed towards the north. Instead, she stopped and said to the two of them, In a while, you will do whatever I tell you to do. If I don't tell you to move, you will just obediently watch. Got it? Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong looked conflicted. No matter what, Yi Zichen was their master. They couldn't just stand by and watch him fall into danger, but this person. They had no choice but to listen to her. After struggling for a while, Jiao Qi gritted his teeth and spoke. Yes, Your Honor. However, if young master is in danger, please allow me and Huairong to go and rescue him. You don't have to worry about that. I will definitely not let him die. Chi Mei's eyes revealed a faint flirtatious look as she gently tapped her red lips with her finger and smiled charmingly. But he's my sweetie. Yi Zichen didn't think the thatched hut was far, but it took him a full hour to reach it. As soon as he reached the door, he heard a low rumble from within. You're here? The transmission entered Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness directly. When he sensed its icy coldness, Yi Zichen's heart skipped a beat. Yi Zichen glanced at the fire attribute ring on his finger, then bowed. Greetings, Special Envoy. The more one spoke, the more mistakes one made. Yi Zichen, who didn't know the details of their exchange, could only try his best not to say too much. That way, he wouldn't give himself away. After a long while, the door to the straw hut was pushed open, and a man wearing a black robe walked out. He was completely wrapped up in it. Come in. The man snorted coldly, then sat on a stone chair outside the hut. Yi Zichen didn't dare tarry. He pushed the door open and entered. How come you're the only one here? When I entered, I clearly sensed 3 auras. 2 of them were Yao. 3 auras. Clearly, this person did not sense Chi Mei's aura. Chi Mei had an artifact capable of concealing her aura, but if this special envoy had an artifact capable of deciphering it, he should be able to detect Chi Mei's aura. There were 2 possibilities. If he didn't, then Yi Zichen and company would have come for nothing. Either he did, but Chi Mei's aura-concealing treasure was of a higher level, which was why the special envoy couldn't sense it. Esteemed special envoy, the less people who see the deal between us, the better. Not bad, you're vigilant enough. The envoy smiled in satisfaction. Soon after, his expression darkened. What's your relationship with those 2 demons? Yes, Yi Zichen didn't dare speak rashly. After a moment's hesitation, he finally answered. He's my attendant. Follower? To his surprise, the envoy actually smiled sinisterly. Yi Zichen's heart tensed when he felt the gaze, as he realized that there was something wrong with his answer. Otherwise, the special envoy wouldn't be looking at him like that. Your Gao family is truly audacious. Have you forgotten that our Shao family's ancestral teachings forbade us from associating with Yao? Have you forgotten that the previous family head hated Yao the most? Or has your Gao family been separated for so long that you've forgotten your ancestors' words? Heavy spiritual pressure instantly bore down on Yi Zichen. Under its pressure, Yi Zichen's body bent uncontrollably, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His heart shook violently and his mind raced. So something like this really happened? If Qi Mei had investigated everything so thoroughly, why had she let Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong enter? If she knew the location and method of the deal, Yi Zichen refused to believe she didn't know that the Shao family had an old grudge with the Yao. She's doing this on purpose. This thought popped into his mind involuntarily, and as soon as it appeared, he couldn't erase it. She'd deliberately let Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong leave, leaving him to face the special envoy alone. She hadn't even used an aura-concealing treasure to conceal Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong's auras. Qi Mei. At that moment, the special envoy's hand reached for Yi Zichen's shoulder. Yi Zichen dodged as fast as he could, but the special envoy still managed to rip his clothes to shreds. When his right shoulder was completely exposed in front of the special envoy also revealed a monstrous rage. Chapter 11:27. Sky plundering again. Yi Zichen could barely breathe under the intense pressure of a supreme divine being. The grass hut crumbled under the envoy's berserk divine power. The world turned pitch black. Countless cyclones swirled in the void, vaguely showing signs of tearing the space apart. Did you notice? In the face of the envoy's sudden attack, Yi Zichen's expression grew unsightly. Given his strength, he could sense the difference in power between them. If he fought the envoy head-on, it wouldn't end well for him. He couldn't afford to panic. If he did, it would truly be over. Esteemed envoy, what's the meaning of this? Even in the face of such intense pressure, Yi Zichen knit his brows and puffed out his chest. His expression was one of incomprehension and hatred. At the same time, he opened his hand and revealed his fire attribute spatial ring. I'm here to make a deal with you. My family gave this to me. Those Yao are nothing but subordinates. How can they be considered allies? If you're trying to test me, I don't think there's any need at all. The ring is right here. Just take a look and you'll find out. He tossed the ring at the envoy. As expected, the envoy reached out and caught it. While the envoy examined the ring's contents, Yi Zichen no longer hesitated. He tried to summon the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. This might be his only chance. That's why he didn't summon the Yao Ceiling Pagoda right away. That was because the envoy's aura was locked onto him. If he made the slightest movement, the envoy would kill him on the spot. If he gave the envoy the ring, he'd split some of his attention to examine it. That way, Yi Zichen could sneak into the Yao Ceiling Pagoda while the envoy was off guard. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Yi Zichen tried to connect with the pagoda, but to his astonishment, his connection with it had been severed. You're seeking death. After examining the ring, the envoy crushed it to dust. Although the spatial ring Yi Zichen had given him was of the fire element, it contained no treasures at all. The emissary, who was burning with rage, threw a punch at him. His fist whistled through the air, tearing the surrounding space apart. Several spatial cracks appeared in the air. Yi Zichen was shocked. He immediately crossed his arms in front of his chest. Yi Zichen's fist slammed into his arm. The immense force sent Yi Zichen flying out of the thatched hut's courtyard. He flew a full 100 meters before coming to a stop. That huge force caused his blood to churn, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It landed on the grass, leaving a smear of dark red. Your Honor! Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong, who'd left with Qi Mei long ago, were visibly shaken. They looked pleadingly at Qi Mei, hoping she'd let them go save Yi Zichen. Qi Mei merely smiled faintly without any worry in her eyes. What's the rush? Just stay here. This master of yours usually hides his cards very deeply. Isn't it good to have a chance to see his trump card now? Yi Zichen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then stood up with bloodshot eyes as he looked at the envoy, who was still closing in on him. It's not that easy to take my life. Lay. Muffled claps of thunder boomed through the sky. Lightning snakes as thick as pythons flicked their tongues and lunged at the envoy. The envoy's expression was disdainful. He dodged the lightning snakes a few times, but when they landed, they immediately blasted several large craters into the ground. Wind, rain, lightning, fire. In this moment of life and death, Yi Zichen couldn't hold back. Even if word got out that he was proficient in the Tao of the 5 elements, he had to use it. As he roared, wind, rain, lightning, and fire instantly appeared. Including the lightning from before, they were the 5 elements of heaven and earth. The Tao of the 5 elements. The envoy shot past Yi Zichen in astonishment. Ever since the 5 elements' great emperor's death, practically all cultivators of the 5 elements had disappeared from the god realm. Ignoring the fact that the Tao of the 5 elements was difficult to comprehend, even if you were lucky enough to step into it, you'd find it difficult to reach its peak after losing your Tao heart. Yet this person had comprehended the Tao of the 5 elements, and seemed to have achieved minor success. 5 elements 8 trigrams formation. As soon as the 5 elements appeared, Yi Zichen roared once more. Instantly, an 8 trigrams formation appeared beneath his feet. Shockingly, the Tao of the 5 elements existed within it. Barrier. With another roar, the 8 trigrams formation dissipated, transforming into countless motes of light that fell from the sky. The motes of light converged to form a barrier of light that contained the Tao of the 5 elements, completely trapping Yi Zichen within. Humph, do you think I can't do anything to you just because you've got a turtle shell? When the envoy saw Yi Zichen transform the Tao of the 5 elements into a defensive barrier, he sneered disdainfully. In a situation like this where he had no way out, defending would only lead to a slow death. In the end, he wouldn't be able to escape death. If he wanted to live, he might as well go all out with a thunderous attack. He might even have a chance at survival. In his eyes, Yi Zichen was already meat on the chopping block. He could no longer stir up any trouble. However, within the barrier, Yi Zichen smiled wickedly. In the blink of an eye, he pulled a demigod longsword from his spatial ring. He held it in his right hand and stroked its edge with his left. When his left hand fell, his gaze sharpened beyond compare. He raised the sword high into the air, then gripped the hilt with both hands. The illusory image of an azure dragon appeared behind him. As the dragon roared, his long sword flashed with blinding golden light. So it's him. Chi Mei, who'd been watching from afar, was shocked. However, she quickly smiled radiantly. Even when she saw Yi Zichen display the Tao of the 5 elements, she wasn't surprised in the slightest. He'd obtained the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and even activated it, so he had to possess the Tao of the 5 elements. This was all within her knowledge, so there was nothing to be surprised about. In truth, she'd only done this to see just how far Yi Zichen had progressed in the great Tao of the 5 elements. She never would have guessed he'd bring her so many pleasant surprises. Since you're him, I'm afraid there's no need for this test to continue. Sweetie, I really wasn't wrong about you. A sickly smile suddenly appeared on Chi Mei's face. Her entire face was stained with a pinkish hue. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong were astonished as well. Even though they were so far away, they could still sense the heaven-destroying, earth-shattering power contained within Yi Zichen's sword technique. Jiao Qi and Meng Huairong couldn't help but look at each other in astonishment. If they asked themselves honestly, even if they were in their true forms, it would be difficult for them to block this next attack. At the same time, Yi Zichen raised his demigod artifact and roared, "How dare you!